All right, good morning. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors December 3rd meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we're going to begin with the roll call.
Supervisor Brandow.
Here.
Supervisor Mendez. Here. Supervisor Pacheco.
Here.
Supervisor Quintero.
Here.
Chairman Magzik.
And I am here.
All five present. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. And here with us today is Matt Dildine. Matt Dildine is the Fresno Rescue Mission Executive Director, an amazing man who loves the Lord. He has a beautiful family. His kids go to Clovis schools, and my wife has an opportunity to work with the ones that are still in elementary school. So if I could ask all of you to rise while Matt Dildine does the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance thereafter.
Thank you for giving the opportunity today. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being such a good and gracious Lord who gives us the gifts of grace and mercy in amounts that we cannot fully understand. Father, we thank you that you care about the broken, the lost, those who are struggling, Father, with poverty, those who are struggling with health care, those that are struggling to buy eggs and to buy gas, Lord. And especially during this season when we have so many reasons to give thanks, we know that so many are struggling, Father. And we thank you that your heart is a heart that cares for them the most. And I thank you and I pray for the men who are up here who've been elected as representatives of this county. I thank you for the men and women, Father, Lord, that are behind these men, Father, that are tasked, Father, with doing so much to take care of so many things in this county, Lord. We pray for your blessing and your favor upon our county and the cities that comprise it. We pray, Father, Lord, for peace and prosperity. We pray for growth in those areas, Lord, that have been neglected. We pray for the people that need help that's beyond their capacity to help themselves, Lord. Father, we also pray for their personal lives. We pray for their family, their children, their spouses, Father. We pray, Lord, that they would also receive peace and prosperity, Lord, that you'd protect them, Father. And the business of politics can be so ugly at times. Lord, we know that you are involved in many things like feeding the homeless, Father, providing aid to people who need it, Father. But we also need you, Lord, in the details of this county, things that may seem mundane, Father, and yet impact so many people. Things like where monuments exist, Father, that impact so many people. Things, Father, like budgets that impact so many people, Lord. So we just pray, Father, for your hand, that we would be united, Lord, as a county and trying to glorify you and trying to seek your will for our county, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. If you join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you.
We now move to item number 1, approve agenda.
Any members wishing to make modifications to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse myself from item 13.1.
Okay.
At that time, I'll just remind you and step out of the room.
Okay, not a problem. Understood.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
We now move to item number 2, approve consent agenda item numbers 24 through 70. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff wishes to delete item 48, and it will return to the board on December 17th. And as mentioned by Supervisor Brandow, he will recuse himself from 13.1.
All right, board members, any other items that you want to have pulled from consent? Yes.
Clarification, Mr. Chairman, I also will be recusing myself with 13.1.
Understood.
Thank you.
Not a problem. All right. Seeing no items from members to pull, anyone in the public wishing to pull any of the consent items that we will comment on right after we're done with our presentations?
Good morning, Chair and Board. We'd like to pull item number 51.
Item 51. All right, item 51 will be pulled. Seeing no further public comment, I'm going to close the public portion and entertain a motion for approval of the remainder.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
We now move to item number 3 under the Board of Supervisors. Presentation of retirement plaque to Philip Fertilage, Department of Public Works and Planning, 32 years of service.
All right. And on this particular item, we've got speakers from Public Works and Planning. We have Steve White here, and I believe James Garcia might be here as well. Okay, Steve White's going to do the presentation. The floor is yours, Steve.
Good morning, Board. The celebration today is one of our best. He's retiring after about 32 years. He's worked at Carruthers. His name is Philip, standing next to me, and I'll give him a moment to gather all in. And there's a couple quotes I want to give you from some of his coworkers, okay? Philip has been here for 32 years. Carruthers, Kalinga, hard places to work, hard places to work, but he's committed and stayed with us through the process. He retired out as a lead worker from an REO1 to an REO2 and went to lead workers, and he's done a magnificent job. Quotes, one of Phil's greatest attributes was leading by example. There was not much he couldn't do and or convey how it should be done to others. He will be missed not only for his leadership, but also his willingness to help anyone, anytime. And Buddy, since this is your district primarily, he's done a phenomenal job out there, and that's a lot of roads for him to take care of and bridges. Second quote. Well, we didn't get all the roads right, but give us a break here. Philip is a great man, co-worker, and friend. He was always willing to share his knowledge and experience to anyone who wants it. Phil is straightforward and to the point. That's what we very much appreciate about him. He is a great model of what county employees should be. So today, he's retiring in front of this board, and with that, I'll step aside and allow him to make any comments he chooses to.
You guys, it was a great run. This board had passed raises that affected my life and my family and was much appreciated. I know you guys have a tight budget and you got to stretch your money, and you do a great job. It's hard when you only have X amount of dollars and you got the rest of the alphabet to fill, and it's a lot. And we're all here needing it, and you're sharing it. So I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members from the board wishing to make comments?
I'll make them real quick. Hey, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, that was just saying the roads are bad is not your fault. You have to take care of something that's sick. It's like a lot of sick people you got to take care of. And you've done a fantastic job doing it, and I really appreciate. And the people in the greater Riverdale, Carruthers area and Kalinga area have really appreciated your hard work.
I have found that people who have connections to the areas that you are responsible for, there's a 50-50 chance that you're related to Buddy Mendez. So is Buddy your cousin? Just curious.
I know some of his family very well.
Very good, very good. Sal.
I just want to thank you for all the great work that you've done. I mean, it's a tough job, but I tell you, you're in one of my favorite departments that gets the work done. Very professional and very thorough. So just want to thank you, because there's a lot of folks that don't see the face of the people that do the work. So you're the one. Thank you. Thank you too.
All right. Do you have any family members that are here with you today? Outstanding. Well, I would ask at this time, we would like for you to come forward. We have a plaque. We have a letter here for you, just expressing our gratitude for being part of the county family. And so if they can come forward, we'd love to get a picture with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the hard work, Philip.
Careful to.
This is it.
There you go.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
We now move to item number 4, under Board of Supervisors, presentation of retirement plaque to Cynthia Hager, Department of Behavioral Health, 40 years of service.
And I believe We have our director here, but do we also have our division manager, Luisa Parra Sanchez, here as well?
Chairman, my apologies. Deputy Director Dr. Leslie Castro-Flores will speak
Okay.
on Cynthia's behalf, and Luisa is also present. Our apologies for the change up on that.
Not a problem.
I'll turn the floor over to my colleague, Dr. Castro-Flores, but I cannot resist the temptation to share just a few words for Cynthia. Cynthia has been a mentor to me personally. With 40 years tenure with the County of Fresno, she was there when I started. And not only did she mentor many clinicians across this county, in fact, I think it would be hard to find a clinician of any longevity who did not receive mentorship from Cynthia, but she also was a great leader. Before she became a clinical supervisor, in fact, she was a leader in the department, and her leadership shined all the way through. And I'm really humbled to say that even in my role as the director in this last 3 years, Cynthia led me. She was not afraid to provide the facts, the hard truths that need to be heard, and solutions. So I will miss her greatly. We already miss you, Cynthia. And it's been a sincere pleasure to work alongside her. And so without further ado, Dr. Leslie Castro-Flores.
Cynthia was my mentor too. Cynthia was everybody's mentor in the department. Cynthia started her career with the county back in 1984 as a probation officer for the juvenile division. Then she gained her master's degree in social work in 1988 and was hired by the children's division in November of 1988. She became licensed in 1991, and in 1995 she was promoted to senior licensed mental health clinician, and that meant that she was going to mentor unlicensed clinicians, individual and group supervision. And from there on, she served the department in many capacities, as a mentor, as a clinical supervisor, helped develop programs like DUI back in 2018, and she gained a consultation certification for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing Institute. So she served as a consultant for our eating disorder clinicians that were being trained to serve the population that needed those services. So in conclusion, Cynthia has been an asset for the department. We are very proud of everything she contributed to. She made the department better with her presence, her mentoring, and just by being Cynthia and being there for us. So she has been a leader for many, many years. And we do miss her, but we are happy for her 40 years of service that impacted the department and the community we serve. Thank you, Cynthia.
Do you have any words of wisdom for us? 40 years is, that's a big chunk of time.
I don't know that I have any words of wisdom, but I am so grateful for the opportunities I had through Fresno County. I'd say especially the last 2 years, the leadership has been wonderful. And of course, mental health has been more recognized and supported. And it's something I think our community really needs. And I am grateful for so many things. One of the things is for several years, I was able to work half-time in a job share, so I was able to stay home and raise my kids and still continue my professional career, and that was one of the greatest gifts the county ever gave me. So I thank you all for the support of the Department of Mental Health and my wonderful leadership here that has been consistently supportive, and I wish the department well, and thank you for having me here today.
And do you have any significant others or family here with you?
I do, my husband and my daughter.
Excellent. And any board members wishing to make comments?
Congratulations, Cynthia. 40 years, that's a stretch, you know. There's very few that make it that far that come before us. So and then to hear your colleagues talk about your time mentoring them, that's also really important. A lot of people come on a job now, they're left to themselves and they got to figure it out the hard way. So having somebody to mentor them and walk them through, it's very valuable. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
If you can bring your family members forward with you, we'd like to get a picture with you, and we also have a plaque and a card for you. Oh, Robert. Oh, yeah, I love Robert. Robert and Bobby. They're good people. Yeah. Good to see you. I'm Nathan. I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
We now move to item number 5. Under Chairman Magsick and Sheriff Coroner Public Administrator, conduct first hearing to amend the ordinance code of Fresno County, Title 8, Chapter 8.40, Noise Control, waive reading of the ordinance in its entirety and set second hearing for December 17, 2024. Designate County Council to prepare a fair and adequate summary of the proposed ordinance and direct the clerk of the board to post and publish the required summary in accordance with Government Code Section 25124B1.
And Bernice, were we going to take up 51?
After this item?
Perfect. That'll be fine. All right. So the sheriff's office and my office have been working together on a noise ordinance, and the county has seen over the course of the last few years calls for service increase in the more rural parts of Fresno County, where in some cases some individuals are purchasing residential properties and turning them into venues, which is not appropriate. And in some cases, people are just having very loud parties. And so we've put together this particular item today, this ordinance amendment. And we met, the Sheriff's Department, my office met probably about 7 or 8 months ago to begin discussing this. The Sheriff's Department worked with Code Enforcement, the CAO's office, as well as County Counsel's office to draft the ordinance that we have before us at this time. And with that, who is going to present? Paul, do you want to give any more introduction on this item, or should we just bring the sheriff up to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll say some words, and I think we could bring the sheriff up as well. But this is something that, as your board knows, we've had many public comments here speaking about this. So this is something that we've been working on with your office for some time. I'd like to, in particular, thank Samantha Buck and Fina in our office, who also assisted with you in this effort. But this is something that we will also purchase the tools so that when this ordinance is in effect, that we will be ready to move on this. But with that, I'll entertain the sheriff or others adding comments to this item.
Good morning, Chairman of the Board, members of the Board. In looking over the item and looking over the changes to the ordinance, I believe that this is a step in the right direction that gives us additional tools. It's going to enhance the punishment, and it provides some real consequences for people who violate the noise ordinance, because many times now we get called out to these types of situations, and we're always looking for a reporting party or someone who wants to be the victim. And there's not real teeth in the law as far as what the consequences are for these individuals. And as it was said about the residential areas that have now turned into some of these like social gatherings, event venues and things like that, it does harm the quality of life and the peace and quiet of individuals who live, especially out in some of the unincorporated areas of Fresno County. Some of the provisions of holding property owners accountable who are not present is good, because many times property owners are renting properties to people, and if they're held accountable, that's just another step in this process to hopefully get their renters or those who are leasing property to abide by the law and not have these noise complaints. The civil fine structure is good. It will increase with each additional offense. I think that's something that's positive and would be encouraging to get people to bring the noise levels down, because we all know that if you hit somebody's pocketbook, that's where you can get some change. And then, under the ordinance itself, 6 months in jail and up to a $1,000 fine. I think those are positive in the right direction to help us do our job. This is a tool. Obviously, Paul said we're going to have to purchase some tools. But I also like the fact when you read the ordinance, it defines specific areas where we take the decibel readings. It talks about walls and ceilings. It talks about where you are. It talks about time of day. It talks about decibel levels. So I think those are very clear and concise. And once it's measured, it's much easier for us to defend if we are in a court or it turns out there's some sort of legal action against us. So with that, I'm in support of it. We'll just need to purchase some tools so we can effectively go out and do our job. I'm sure this will make some individuals not happy in Fresno County who have purchased property for events, for social gatherings and other things. So with that, do you have any questions of me?
Any questions for the sheriff?
Yeah, so you, and I'm going to ask Brandon, he's standing there, you think this is sufficient to get some of the deals in the unincorporated areas taken care of?
Yeah, I do. When this whole thing started, it came up just the amount of calls for service we were going to that we really didn't have the ability to take much action.
Yeah.
And I think that, with Supervisor Magsik's direction, this really does give us a lot more teeth to it. And, I think this is, as we enforce it, what's good about it is it's not a crazy fine, but the word's going to spread. And that's a big part of it, is we're hoping that after a few incidents, we'll start have some self-correcting issues in some of our habitual ones. And it's really just about being fair to everybody. A lot of these places have to get permits, they have to pay business licenses, and we have people that are just not doing that. So I think that the word will spread amongst that group, and it gives us the teeth. So we're very thankful to Supervisor Magsik and everybody that worked with us on this.
And I'm asking you because you've been an area commander recently.
I have, and I've received lots of calls about this. This is one of the highest quantity of calls that we have in the county, and it just takes a lot of time because we have to keep going back over and over and over again when we could be out doing better things, catching better crooks, as opposed to going to all these party calls over and over again. So I do think it'll be effective.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Yeah, please step forward.
Good morning. My name's Tony Plagenza. I live in Nathan's district, and recently, we've been facing this problem for the last 6 months. A neighbor installed a shooting range 50 feet from my property line. The decibel level is approaching 90 decibels at the property line. At my house is 80 decibels. I cannot stay at my house when the shooting starts. And this is not just a couple shots or 10 rounds. This goes on for hours. Sometimes it's 3-4 hours at a time, and multiple shots ricocheting off a metal target. You don't know where the ricochets are going. We've called the sheriff's department many times, and until just this last 5 days ago, the sheriff took our side. There's more than one neighbor, and I got another neighbor here that's going to make some comments also. But yeah, I think this is a definite step in the right direction for the sheriff's department to handle it, and maybe have the decibel meters to measure the noise level. But I can tell you where I'm at. I can't stay at my house when this is going on, and this has been going on for the last 6 months. I have to leave. So that's my comment on this, and I think I got another neighbor here that also wants to talk about the same issue. Thank you.
Hi, we're Dean and Jennifer Hubbard. We live just across the way from Tony, on the other side of where all the shooting is taking place. And we moved up there about 10 years ago. I have PTSD from my time in Vietnam. I moved up there for peace and quiet. And about six months ago, as Tony mentioned, our neighborhood just went to hell. When the shooting started, setting up this shooting range, and it's not 22s. Trust me, it's and when I was in the service, I qualified as an expert rifleman, and I know big rounds and stuff. I mean, big caliber guns. You can hear them. It's just, we're about the same distance on the other side. It's big little Sandy Creek, and and it goes on, and you never know when this is going to happen. We know when the shooting is going to start because the traffic on our road is horrendous. We get dust everywhere. All these trucks and cars come in. They shoot for, unknown amount of time. They just keep going and going. And like Tony, sometimes we just have to leave. And And then we know when the shooting stops, these vehicles leave. And so we know the people don't live there. And we know who the property owner is. He lives in Phoenix. And so some of the folks have been in touch with him, but to no avail. It's just like Tony said, just the day before Thanksgiving, it was horrendous.
Thank you.
That's my wife, Jennifer's.
We've called your office several times.
Yeah, in fact, you've responded. We have
We have a
note
letter from
sent
you
to one of our neighbors
to our
about this.
leader. We also have a copy of the letter that the first renter, it's sublet, or it's rented to Bracco Firearms, the owner of Bracco Firearms, and he sublet it to one of his employees who posted a letter on the mailbox, 2 letters on the mailboxes, taped them up there, that he was going to be doing some shooting for his business. And that, when we called the sheriff's department several times, that did stop. And then now it was empty for a while, and the shooting still went on. People were coming up the road, and it was hearsay around the neighborhood that Bracco was teaching. Actually, the owner of Bracco Firearms told our neighbor he was going to be teaching CCW classes, which they have no permit for this. There's no indoor shooting. It's all outdoor shooting.
Oh, about the granddaughters.
I fight cancer every day. 2 of my neighbors have cancer and are fighting cancer also. To have this going on it's horrendous. The noise is horrendous. Our granddaughters, they're 2 and 5, they come up, the shooting starts, they start, what's that, and screaming, and our kids take them home.
Yeah, they
And
refuse to come.
this is our sanctuary up
Don't
there.
want to come back up because of the noise. They're just absolutely terrified. And they don't quite understand what it is, but they just know it scares the crap out of them.
I don't know what else I can say or do.
But, yeah, like Tony said, it sounds like a step in the right direction. We feel pretty helpless in what we can even do to stop this. I mean, we've tried and, calling the sheriff out several times, but they've been very responsive to come out. And
Can I say
might also throw in there that it's interesting, we start calling in about the noise when it's excessive or goes on a long time. Magically, the shooting stops about the time the sheriff shows up. They go down and talk to him, and they've done that. And then maybe a few days or a week or so later, the shooting starts again, and we just have to call again. So, but anyway, thank you for the time and
Would you like the address?
So reach out to my office directly again. I know I've sent a letter, but please reach out again. Brett Rush, who might be listening to this, he's my chief of staff.
Okay.
Just provide information. We'll work directly through my office to see if there's additional steps we
Okay.
can take.
And as we have a small neighborhood, we got together and had a meeting and decided if this continued, this was over the summer, we would get a lawyer. And the lawyer sent a warning letter out to these people and to the owner of the property.
owner. Anyway.
Time's up.
But reach out to Brett. We'll continue to work together on this.
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
for being here. Yeah, seeing no further public comment, I'm going to close the public portion, bring it back to the board. Sal.
Chairman, is there anything in what you're putting together here that if the sheriff has to make repeated visits over a year or something, that they can be fined or sued by the county?
Yeah, there are fines that are incorporated into this, which will escalate. So first offense, there's, I think it's $500, but it escalates. So if the law enforcement is if they continue to be called out, there are penalties that increase.
The other follow-up you might want to consider, if the home is a rental, that they also track down, that the county track down who the owner is. A lot of times absentee owners don't show up just to get the money.
That's part of the ownership, or part of what we're doing as well with this ordinance, is going after the owners too, not just the
Thank you.
renters. All right. With that, seeing no further discussion, I'll move for staff's recommendation. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously.
We now move to item 51 that was pulled by a member of the public under, who's that under?
All right, item 51, and I'll have staff start off with just a brief presentation, and then we'll hear from the members of the public who pulled it. I think this has to do with code enforcement. Hollis? Floor is yours.
Good morning, Board. Hollis McGill, Director of Human Resources. The item before you, the approval of the recommended actions would establish the Code Enforcement Officer Classification Series. The incumbent planners assigned to the Code Enforcement Program would be reclassified to the Code Enforcement Officer Classification Series. The new classification series will create distinct classifications for code enforcement roles, setting them apart from the planner series and formalizing the structure and responsibilities of the Code Enforcement Program. I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions before I open it up to the public? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to the public.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Riley Telford. I'm the Fresno County Chapter President of SEIU Local 521. I'm here to speak on behalf of the represented employees that are going to be impacted by this change, the current planners. The employees and SEIU have no issue with the county finding a legitimate business need if they so see fit of creating a code enforcement unit or classification within the county. However, the concern comes about how this process came about with the employees that were selected to be reclassified. We're talking about employees who have long since enjoyed the ability to be under organized labor, and to take them and to reclassify them into an unrepresented classification. It brings a major concern, as we were just in the midst of reaching out to, now we got to figure out whom, in regards to addressing some workplace concerns as far as feelings of feeling bullied, harassed, what have you. Well, harassed is a strong word, but just uncomfortable work environment. So I'll rephrase my comments to make it uncomfortable work environment. Back in August, the planners were told, well, SEI was noticed that the planners would be moved on the auspice of the CAO's office out of Public Works and Planning. So we met and conferred over that. We were told that there would pretty much be no changes in their job, their duties, and things of that nature. So, and I have my colleague here, John Adams, who's going to speak a little bit more in regards to that. So we saw no initial concern. Fast forward, just 2 months later, we noticed that they were going to change the classification, and now these same employees are going to be unrepresented. And then it's also concern, as we looked over the agenda item, it's like now we're not even sure under what department or who they're going to be under, because the item reads that they're still under Public Works and Planning. However, they're under the CAO's office or in the offices of the CAO's office. So we're not even sure where these employees are going to be assigned to. And we just go back to initial concern. Had there been a recruitment or an in-house recruitment to allow for employees who wish to perform this new function or this new task, that would have been a much cleaner process. That way you could have got employees, whether they're represented, choose not to be represented, what have you, they could apply for the position and they go on with a full knowledge of the work they'll be performing. The other issues and concerns that we have is that there's not going to be any substantive change from the work these employees are currently doing. So it seems that what appears to us is that the only thing is changing is their classification, and thus making them unrepresented. And we understand that if they are under the CAO's office, the chances of them becoming represented again is pretty much zero. So for that reason, we are asking for a pause to be put on this, because the employees are currently doing the work. They're doing the work as planners, but to downward classify them as code enforcement officers, but they're going to be performing the same task and the same work duties, it's a concern for them to no longer be represented. Thank you.
So, anyone else from the public wishing to comment? I'll hold my comments here.
Members of the board, let me get my glasses on here, hang on. Members of the board, my name is John Adams. I am the Vice President for SEIU Unit 22 that represents the planners in the Code Enforcement Unit. And I am a Planner 3 currently working in code enforcement. This consent item does not include the job descriptions for planners or code enforcement officers. I've provided a packet for your board that includes the job descriptions of both classifications, along with a list of job functions that code enforcement planners currently carry out that are not listed as code enforcement duties in the code enforcement job description. Currently, planners are represented by SEI Unit 22 with an MOU that gives planners the ability to meet and confer with management regarding job changes. As code enforcement officers, planners will be unrepresented and no longer have a MOU that allows them to meet and confer, and labor management meetings that allow planners to resolve issues with duties or activities proposed by management. Just this year, the zoning ordinance was updated, which is a good thing, and reconfigured. However, this required study and review by the planners. Code enforcement moved themselves in their own vehicles from downtown to the Pontiac campus. This was despite a meet and confer promises that the county would move the unit. Cars were assigned to planners and program techs when the county's website showed some did not have approval to drive vehicles. Vehicle usage rules were not discussed or brought up. The reason I bring this up is one employee was disciplined for inappropriate usage of a vehicle. The Assistant County Administrative Officer for Code Enforcement tried to issue a building permit without following the state building code. I discussed this with the chief building official and to make sure I was on board on that. Planners and program techs are bullied in case management meetings, insulted and called names in front of their coworkers. My ask is to hold up on this reclassification until labor management issues can be worked out.
John, I need you to wrap up. Thank you.
It.
Thank you.
I'm available for any questions or during this meeting or after.
All right, thank you. And actually, so I'll tell you with this particular item, I don't see anyone else in the public, so I'm going to close the public portion, but I'm going to reserve the right for board members to maybe ask Riley or you, John, some general questions about this. But a couple years ago, this board became somewhat frustrated with what we were seeing happening in the public, and so we created a code enforcement division with Public Works. And maybe I've completely forgotten, but when we set aside whatever it was, $1.8 million, roughly, to hire people and put this department together, it was to do code enforcement. I don't remember us saying we wanted to hire planners. So I can appreciate, John, you talking about how we've just updated our general plan, but really code enforcement should be focusing on code enforcement. So a question I have for you, since you're a Planner 3 in this division, how many backlog code enforcement calls are on the books right now? And how many have you cleared in the last month?
I don't have those numbers. I can give you, I can get back to you. I can tell you from my own cases.
How many have you cleared in the last month?
We've probably cleared, if I had to give a guess, probably several hundred.
You've cleared several hundred?
Not myself. I'm talking about.
In the last month, your units cleared several hundred. That's what you're telling me.
I'm estimating. I
don't
have the paperwork in front
I
of
can
me.
tell you I'm tracking your unit. It's not that good. One of the reasons we're moving it to put it under the CAO's office is at one point there were over 1,000 calls, some of which were over a year old that hadn't been touched. Are you aware of this?
I am aware,
Okay.
and I can give you history
I don't need history. My blood is boiling as I sit here right now. I appreciate everything that you've said, but efficiency is important. And this board has given tools to staff to become efficient. Clearly, what was put into place is not efficient and it's not working. Would you agree?
You mean now?
I mean, the last
Currently
2
or in
years.
the past?
Talking about the last 2 years.
The last 2 years, there's been great improvement.
Okay. John, I appreciate you. I think it's important for us as an organization to make sure that we follow labor rules, all that stuff. I'm on board with that. But I also want to see change. More improvement needs to take place when it comes to code enforcement, making sure that the ordinances that the county has are enforced properly. And as just one board member up here, I can tell you that I am frustrated, and you heard from a couple of my constituents on an item just a couple minutes ago about shooting that's taking place near their property. So I say all that to say this. I think it's important for us on this particular item to give it a couple weeks for our staff to work with the labor units to make sure that we're following appropriate labor rules. But this unit needs to change. It needs to come under the CAO's office, and there's tremendous improvement that I need to see happen immediately. So I wanted to communicate that to you, John, and also Riley, to you too. This is critical. Any other comments? Riley, you have something you want to say?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you, Chairman Max. Again, you bring up a great point, and this is one of the reasons that we cite the importance of labor management meeting. It's management's job. If they understand that, hey, there's a backlog, they need to get certain things done. It's management's job that, hey, how do we make this happen? But when they don't talk to the subject matter experts to get their best ideas and input, how can we help resolve this issue? That's where you have the breakdown. So if I have no idea of how John has to go about doing his work, or have John's ideas of how he should perform his job, but I just tell John, do X, Y, Z, and John might be like,
Riley,
okay.
I appreciate you.
So
I asked John a very simple question about what the backlog was
Yes.
and how many they've cleared in the last month. He said several hundred have been cleared in the last month. I'll tell you that is not accurate. So when I ask basic, simple questions like that and I get information back that isn't accurate, that frustrates me. Can you appreciate that?
yes, I can. Yes,
Okay.
I can.
So, but our staff, I'm going to recommend that we table this item, and for Hollis and HR to work with your division, make sure that we check all the boxes as it comes to labor, because that's critical. That's very important. And then we'll bring this back very soon for us to move forward and do what's appropriate by the employees, but also by the direction of this board too.
Fair enough. That's all we asked for. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just one,
Yes.
one quick comment, and I appreciate the comments that are made, and I just want to make clear that my understanding is the boxes were checked, notification was sent, but there was no response initially. But I do understand that the opportunity to speak now is good, but my understanding is the boxes were checked, just to be clear on that.
Correct. We did everything by the book, so I do support that, but to whatever your direction is.
Well, then so if you did reach out to management, I'm hearing you say that you reached out to labor for labor to work with management. That was done.
For
Yes,
me,
sir.
And so,
labor manager, we've sent the notice. We actually closed the issue because we didn't receive a response in time. Closing letter, we received a response, we received questions, we met, conferred, we did everything we were supposed to do by the book, and we've actually worked very closely with Mr. Matt Constantine throughout this whole process since day one. So he is very much aware of everything that's gone on.
So Riley, that changes the flavor a little bit. So if we reached out, followed proper protocols, and you guys didn't respond, then that's on you.
I mean, I don't want to get into a big debate about it, sir. Out of respect to labor team as well as personnel, there's disagreements, and what we're saying is that these employees were not given the full notice to know that, hey, this department's going to be going under the direction of the CAO's office, and you're going to be unrepresented. Had that been known back in August, when we had the first meeting for them being moved over to the CAO's office, then that, and giving those employees ample time to apply to whatever it is, because still, we don't know if they're under the CEO's office, but they're still under Public Works and Planning. If that's the case, okay, so be it. Give them an opportunity to transfer into another assignment under Public Works and Planning instead of being told you're going into the CEO's office and you're going to lose the ability to be represented. That's the only part that was missing from that, and that was not done. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I by no means am a labor expert, but it's my understanding that when the county creates a new position, by definition, that position is unrepresented. So I think that's the confusion here, is we move someone from planning to a new title, a new category, and when we create a new category, by definition, a new category is not represented until the people of that organization at so point in time choose to be represented or not. So by just doing this, they're automatically unrepresented. My question is, and after hearing this today, is why were the planners moved instead of just opening the positions as was stated by labor earlier? Why did we move people into a new category that originally they didn't sign up for, instead of just create a new position and then open it up and let people who wanted to go and leave the planners where they were?
Sure.
So explain that to me, please.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Shreya Bell, Employment Services Manager. So when we do a classification study like we did for the planners in the code enforcement unit, the discovery was the primary duty of that unit was code enforcement duties. Therefore, Personnel Rule 3, which governs classification, says that those employees who are doing those primary duties are reclassified to the new classification. So that was our recommendation with this study. As my colleague Gilbert Del Torre said, we worked very closely with the CAO's office on this with Matt Constantine, who has been overseeing that unit since their move in August.
So is my assessment right? When we create a new category, are they by definition not represented?
You are 100% correct, yes.
So no matter what we do, they're not represented.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just part of the,
Because then it's seen as unfair if we as personnel are placing classifications into units.
Perfect.
So
that's part of that, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Brian. I think that's very instructive.
Yeah.
I just got one.
Yeah.
Expand that, but then those people can ask to be represented, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they're not represented in the CAO's office. That's the piece. I didn't mean to interrupt, sir, but in the CAO's office, under CAO's office, the chance of them becoming represented because of the administrative tasks under the CAO's office, they will probably more than likely remain unrepresented. And this is something I know. I don't believe there's any representative.
Dan, weigh in, please.
Right now, all the employees that are the analysts and those individuals and the assistants and the deputies in the CAO's office are classified as confidential because of the jobs they do and having to deal with labor. My understanding, although I haven't been directly involved in this, is that this is just moving a code enforcement office over. It's not going to be involved in the administration of the county. It just is putting under the administration of the CAO's office, the code enforcement unit, so that sort of process, and it's not necessarily, you don't have to make them all confidential in the CAO's office, but this county has. So that would not preclude these people from being represented.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just ask, I believe this move was done because, as you stated, this was a priority of the board. And two of the employees that report directly to the board are the CAO and county council. So I've made it statements in open session many months ago. I don't care if we follow like the city's model and we put them in under county council because, as you stated, we want action. We're tired of waiting. And so we moved it out of Public Works to two employees that we directly oversee to make sure that this is getting done. So the CAO took it on himself to do it. Had not he done it, I would have stuck it under county council because then we would have hounded county council every month, every meeting as to why this isn't getting done. When, as the chairman said, there's over 1,000 backlogs, and we hear people today, the people are tired, and we want this done. So again, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the boxes were checked, we can move forward. If they weren't, then I'm okay with waiting too.
Staff
But like
has said
you,
they've
I
been
want to
checked.
keep moving forward.
Staff has said they've been checked, and so that being the case, I'm ready to move forward. So with that, public portion is closed. We already did that. Any other comments before we start making motions?
No, with your last comments, I'm in agreement because this is something I've also worked on for a long time, and I want to make sure it gets done while I'm here. So I'm ready to vote today. But I do want to say I appreciate the comments from Riley and John. I mean, it's good to hear their perspective. But Brian's line of questioning was really strong as well. And I mean, anytime we create a category, they're unrepresented. I don't think there's anybody here against these folks becoming represented. I mean, they have that option, right? So it's not like that's part of our conversation. Our conversation's about getting this stuff done that's been in limbo for many years.
So Hollis, I would ask too, if a person that was moved from planning to code enforcement, if they don't want that job, can they go back to being a planner?
We'll work with them if
Yeah,
that is
we
not
should be giving them the freedom, yeah, because if they got a job that maybe they didn't sign up and don't want, we shouldn't force them to do that, and they should go back to what they were doing, and we'll bring in different people for this task.
Absolutely.
And something else too, this board, we created a division and put money aside to deal with code enforcement. So I want code enforcement officers doing the job that this board instructed staff to create. And it doesn't sound to me like that maybe has been done to the fullest extent that this board wanted. And that's what I want. So I think that's what this board wants too. So with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'd love to make a motion if I could.
Okay, we have a motion
to
for
approve.
staff's recommendation on
Yes.
item 51. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
That concludes all the consent items pulled from this morning. We now return to your regular agenda. Item 6, under Chairman Magsick and Administrative Office, direct staff to continue to work with the Dunlap Cemetery District to find 2 volunteers for the district's Board of Trustees until June 30th, 2025. And if no qualified volunteers are found, direct staff to bring back to the Board of Supervisors a different recommendation by August 5th, 2025.
So I want to, before we have Amina present, this will be a short presentation, but I want to thank Amina on this item. If you recall, 4 or 5 months ago, you instructed us to have a community meeting. We did. But Amina's been working tirelessly at this and gave up one of her evenings as well to have a community meeting out in the beautiful area of Dunlap. And so with that, Amina, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Good morning, Board. Amina Flores-Becker, Deputy CAO. This subject is being brought back before your Board based on your direction. On September 24th, your Board directed staff to bring back a recommendation on next steps for the county in addressing the full vacancy of the Dunlap Cemetery District Board of Trustees by today's date. On October 8th, the clerk's office received an application for from a district resident that was deemed qualified for a district board seat who was officially appointed by your board on November 5th. On November 26th, District 5 and staff held a Dunlap community meeting, as Supervisor Magsick mentioned, to discuss the state of the district. Approximately 10 residents were in attendance. During that meeting, 2 participants verbally agreed to volunteer as the remaining board trustees. These volunteers still need to submit an application, be determined as qualified, and be appointed by your board. Because of these recent activities, staff's recommendation today is to get direction from your board to continue to work on filling the district board seats until June 30th of 2025. If we are not able to fill the district board seats by that date, staff will bring back an item with alternative recommendations. That completes my presentation.
I think it's a great presentation. And ultimately, since this is just kind of a receive and file item, no additional action is needed. So we don't even need to go out to the public, but I just want to say thank you, Amina, and we'll continue to work hard to get those seats filled so the community can continue to have that cemetery district. So no comments. Bernice, we're ready to move to the next item.
Thank you.
Under item number 7, under the County Clerk Register of Voters, under Administrative Number Policy Number 34 for competitive bids or requests for proposals, determine that an exception to the competitive bidding requirements under AP 34 is satisfied and a suspension of competition is warranted due to unusual or extraordinary circumstances.
Mr. Coos, I think you certified the election today, or you will at 5, is that correct?
Yeah, we're still doing the final little bits of cleanup. Yeah, there's even a couple more ballots are still being tabulated today because we had activity throughout the Thanksgiving weekend with cure letters coming in. So staying busy, but we're now shifting today to that certification process and all of the various paperwork that we need to do. here locally and also for the Secretary of State. Good morning, Chairman Magsig and Supervisors. I'm James Coos, your County Clerk, Registrar of Voters, and I'm here today to request that the Board execute an agreement with Dominion Voting Systems Incorporated of Denver, Colorado, to provide continuing software licenses, maintenance, and software and hardware warranties for the County Clerk, Registrar of Voters Department. This item is retroactive to May 14th, 2024, and follows the general county practice of a base 3-year contract period with 2 optional 1-year extensions, potentially running through May 2029. This agreement differs from the base county contract by excluding the base agreement's Exhibit E regarding the handling of confidential personal data records. The proposed services and software provided by Dominion Voting Systems Incorporated do not include access or transfer of any confidential personal information as covered by Exhibit E, so we believe the removal of Exhibit E is appropriate in this agreement. The agreement does include significant cybersecurity protections in Exhibit D. This agreement does not increase net county costs, as the services to be provided are already included in the department's 2024-2025 budget and will be included in subsequent budget requests. At the start of 2019, the department prepared and conducted a request for proposal process with county purchasing for a voting system, including software and hardware licensing, warranties, and support. Dominion Voting Systems Democracy Suite, currently in version 5.10A, was selected from 3 qualified responses. An agreement for the purchase of the equipment, as well as ongoing licenses, warranties, and support, was entered into between the county and Dominion Voting Systems in May of 2019. Since May of 2019, Fresno County's voting system has been used in the successful conduct of 19 elections, including the November 5th, 2024 consolidated general election that will be certified this afternoon. During each of these elections, extensive testing and audits were conducted on all Dominion voting equipment and functionalities, often far exceeding the legally required reviews. For the November 5th election, we have audited over 10,000 ballots, representing just a hair under 3.3%. In all audits conducted in Fresno County in the past 5 years, including the 1% manual tally for this November 5th election, no errors in tabulation of ballots by the Dominion voting system have been identified. Dominion Voting Systems Incorporated have consistently provided excellent support and service throughout the past 5 years. They have responded quickly to physical or process issues with solutions that ensured the department's timely and accurate delivery of voting services to the citizens of Fresno County. This agreement will position Fresno County for another 4-year cycle of successful elections and positions the department for an optimal voting system succession process. This agreement will continue until May 2029, an off year, I'll put that in quotes. We don't really have too many off years, but it's not a year with statewide elections generally. Providing sufficient time at the end of the contract for the department to properly plan for and implement a request for proposal for a successor voting system. The department is very satisfied with Dominion's equipment and support over the past 5 years, but we believe the current voting equipment will be reaching its end of life at the end of this contract. And along with anticipated version upgrades across all voting systems, the end of this contract will be well placed for assessing our needs going into the next decade. A representative of Dominion Voting Systems is here today, and we would both be very happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Board members, questions for James? I have a couple here real quick. So again, with the Dominion system for us, it's my understanding different states use their voting systems differently. Is that correct? So here in Fresno County, the Dominion systems that we have are mainly used to tabulate ballots. So ballots are sent through and they tabulate how people have voted.
So Dominion Systems provides us with the ballots. So creation of the artwork is one of the support services that we work with Dominion Systems for, and then the tabulation of those ballots, yes. So it's very ballot focused there, whether it be the creation of the artwork and then the tabulation.
Do they hold any data? Do the machines hold any data on voter history, how voters have voted, anything like that?
So for every election, there are memory cards in our tabulation system. Those are the black boxes that if you go to one of our vote centers, we have the ImageCast Evolution tabulators at each of our vote centers. There are memory cards at those locations that are specific to that location and that election. And those do hold records for that election. So only for that one. We upload those, and that's how we're able to report results for the whole county. We do hang on to those memory cards for 22 months as required by state law, but then they are disposed of. Those memory cards are separate from the system as a whole. So other than the per election record of ballots, which are not connected to voters in any fashion, there is no history being maintained there. We do maintain backups. We have a full record of our elections over the last 5 years and even going back before that. But that is separate from the machines themselves. The machines are cleared after every election and then prepared for the next election.
And it's my understanding we're going to have a special election in the city of Fresno to fill a council seat. Probably the vacancy has to happen, and then the vacancy has to be declared, and then a special election will be called. So that could happen sometime, maybe as late as May or June of next year.
It's my current understanding that the city of Fresno is looking at actually as early as April.
April, wow. You indicated that over the last 5 years, those machines have been involved in 19 elections. Did I hear you say correctly that the machines have made 0 errors?
Correct. In our audits of those 19 elections, we have found 0 errors in the tabulation process. There have been times when we have found a human error in the adjudication process where a human has misadjudicated, for example, a write-in ballot during those audits. But we have found 0 tabulation errors by the Dominion voting system.
And one last question. So I know you've answered this, but I need to ask it again anyways. With the Dominion system that we use, is it hooked up to the internet?
It is not connected to the internet in any way. It's not even connected to our county system. It is air-gapped and completely separated from any other system. It is only that tabulation system.
All right. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but how many other counties use the Dominion system nationwide?
Nationwide, I can't answer that.
About California.
Steve might be able to answer that. In California, we're at 42, I believe, 39.
39 out of the 58 counties use
Correct.
Dominion.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So any other questions? All right. And still, Dominion is qualified both, you have to be certified by the state and federal government, whatever system you end up using, correct?
You must use a California certified system. California doesn't receive any systems that haven't been previously certified at the federal level. It should be noted that to come to California, you actually have to come in at a higher level. We have stricter requirements in California. It's one of the reasons why we use the 510A system, the 510 system in California compared to the 55 system that was used previously in Georgia and some other counties, because California looked at the 55 system and said we need to have more. We need more security and more stuff to match what our requirements are here in California, and Dominion did that and brought in the 510 system.
All right. Any other questions for James?
Maybe after public comment?
Yeah, that's fine, because I'm about to open it up to public. All right, let's open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item, please step forward and...
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Tammy Richardson. I live in District 1. Since I've been attending board meetings several times, the board has been presented with retroactive contracts that need immediate attention. Some waive the bidding process, some do not. Every contract asks for a 3-year base with 2 optional 1-year contracts at Mr. Kuz's discretion. Also, this precedent seems to have started back in 2018-19 when Fresno County had to make the quick decision to enter the Voters' Choice Act, giving up local control. So, just a quick trip down memory lane. On October 10th, 2023, item number 34, a printing company contract was brought before the board with a retroactive contract to August 1st, 2023. You, the board, stated in your comments that contracts should be brought to you in a timely manner. I would urge you to go back and watch this meeting and listen to your comments. This item was not passed, but then brought back before the board on November 7th for a one-year contract from November 23rd to June 30th, 2024, and it was passed. January 23rd, 2024, item number 7, the board was asked to waive the competitive bidding process for Elections Information Management System and approve the contract retroactive to July 1st, 2023. That is 6 months retroactive. It was stated by the board that, with the March 5th election coming up quickly, this needed to pass to stay on schedule. September 10th, 2024, item number 26. The board approved an agreement with Pro Document Solutions retroactive to August 22nd, 2024. Are we seeing a pattern here yet? This brings us to today. Mr. Coos is asking for an agreement with Dominion Voting Machines that will waive the competitive bidding requirements and be retroactive to May 14th, 2024. We seem to have a problem with last-minute contracts that are retroactive and waive the competitive bidding procedures for many of these agreements coming before you. In closing, I would like to voice once again, I do not agree with using machines for elections, and they do not make elections results come any quicker. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, and I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I just have a few talking points I want to share to follow what she said. I know that this board is very responsible when it comes to money. I've been here now 2 years, and fiscally very responsible, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned that this is being kind of run through quickly. I know maybe because it's retroactive to May, but you do have 2 new board members coming on in January, and I know you all know that. Just some thoughts. What about a one-year contract? What about taking some time to reflect and review our options? I know that the cost of the voters, I think comparing the cost of the Voters' Choice Act, which we are in, versus the precinct model might be a good reflection. The precinct model is still used in 30 counties here in California. Perhaps we could dialogue with Kern County. They are similar to our county in population, about 917,000 people. We're a little over 1 million. They, of course, do mail-in ballots because every county in our state is required to do that because of our state law. But they do the precinct model, and they have 1 day for voting. So in-person voting is done just on that 1 day. Of course, they mail out ballots like we do. I just think it might be worth looking at, maybe just slowing down a little. But again, I know we need our election system, and I know we obviously have some election coming up in the spring. But just a consideration of maybe instead of a 5-year contract, maybe something less to be able to reflect and look a little more. So that's basically all I have to share, and thank you for giving me the time.
Good morning, Chairman, Board. My name is Brent Burdine, and I'm here not to advocate for or against the contract. I'm here to advocate for the process. You have a civic process to follow, and I haven't seen evidence of the urgency or special circumstances that would compel you to not follow county policy. Just like our sheriff, when he has a suspect, he doesn't decide, well, I'm going to not give him a lawyer, not go before the DA, not put him in front of a judge, not take him to court. We have a judicial due process that takes place. And that builds public confidence and public trust in our government and our law enforcement. Just as we have in you, we have a county policy that deals with competitive bidding, that brings out a request for proposals. And I think it would also be the board's due diligence to do a 5-year review on the performance of the previous contract before renewing a new contract. There was talk at one time about crunching some numbers, such as the initial estimated cost of using the contract compared to the actual costs, the efficiency of it, the effectiveness of it. Again, that report, to my knowledge, hasn't been done. We haven't seen it. It's not made public. Part of the process is public scrutiny and public debate. So I would urge you to follow the public process. Where is the harm in not following normal procedures? There is potential harm when you shortcut a system. It damages public confidence and public trust. So, that being said, I again urge you, follow due process, follow the civic due process, and don't shortcut it. In the end, and after, I'm sure the process takes several months, we might come up with ROV Coos's conclusion, and you might concur with it. But what matters is the process, that you brought the public in and everything is above board on it. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Brent a question if I
So what we'll do is we'll finish with the public comment, and then you can bring Brent back up when we close public comment. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Gina Delera, and I'm in Nathan's district. And we've spoke on this before. Every time this comes up, as everybody else prior to me have said, it is a rush. There's all this stuff that there's not even that many of us here because we didn't even know this was actually going to be handled this way. So it's not really fair for the public. We were told that this was based on a financial issue, but Mr. Coos has not provided anybody that I'm aware of what we have gained or lost using Dominion. But we know for sure that most of the public, for one reason or another, does not trust Dominion. We would rather go back to hand counted ballots, paper ballots, ID verification. But I know that's not with Dominion, but I think that Mr. Coos needs to explain why he needs the suspension of the competitive bids, and that's not clear to, I don't know if it's clear to anybody. It's definitely not been faster because I'm going to be 59, and I remember doing elections when they did actually come in much sooner. We didn't have a month of voting. So it's not efficient financially. It's not efficient time-wise. There's just nothing timely about it. And the public is, in general, is not satisfied in the dollars spent or the rush every time. And I think this needs to be, at the very least, waited to vote upon for us to get some answers to our questions. And this is December, the beginning of December. And you obviously have until May to sign this contract. So why wouldn't we have time to discuss it or table it until January when we're not in the holidays, and then you have more public input? I'm very curious as to why the Board of Supervisors, it seems like, are very adamant on using this Dominion machine when it's got such a it's got a dark cloud over it, over every place that it's being used. Whether, and we could go into that too. It's more protected so that nobody is allowed to see the inside of the mechanisms. We're just told how this machine works. Whereas we have seen evidence that these machines can go online. So this machine is protected better than anything else, where we can't see what's going on, and there is no.
Gina, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Connie Brooks. I'm in Buddy's district, Mr. Mendez, Supervisor Mendez. And I agree with what everybody said. That was really well said, everyone. And but I even would like to take it a step further and go like what Huntington Beach did, and they all voted to do voter ID. And I think it was overturned in the courts, and then it got put back in, I believe. I don't know what the last recognition of that is, but anyway, so that would be awesome. And we do have a new sheriff coming in town in January 20th, and so maybe we could wait till then to see maybe a few things that are going to change. But, and I did do some curing of votes this weekend, and there was one lady that hadn't voted in California for 12 years. And so without voter ID, we really don't have the system of voting. And but I agree with what everybody said, and I don't trust Dominion either. And I believe it is attached to computers. But anyway, I just want you to know that there's a lot of concern about voting with your people, your constituents. And so maybe take some time to look at it again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. I'm going to close the public portion, and I'm going to bring it back. Steve, you had some questions, so.
Yeah, Brent, and thanks for everybody that came up today. Appreciate everybody's viewpoint. Brent, I want to ask you a question. Because, and look, I listened and took notes on every speaker that spoke today, and there's like a whole host of things that people are trying to talk about inside of this conversation about this contract. But you said something about, following the public process, comparing us to the sheriff or the court system. Like, what public process do you think Fresno County has not followed?
Well, this is what I'm specifically referring to is the suspension of the competitive bidding process. I think that ROV Coos should follow the process, the entirety of the process, put out a request for proposals, and take in competitive bids. Now, that may or may not change his conclusion, but doing the process, this allows public scrutiny, public debate, and everything's above board. And that builds public confidence and public trust. Taking shortcuts on these matters damages trust and confidence in the public. Right now, election workers are still working tabulating. They're working hard. They diligently follow policy and procedures. And I think to respect the election workers, the board should also follow policy and procedures and respect it. I don't see the urgency of it has to be done now. We don't have, I understood like last year when we had a primary coming up right at the beginning of the year, there was a time crunch and you made the decision to make a partial extension for that. Dominion, for what I understand in the readings, that Dominion has decided they will continue the software, hardware support pending the contract decision. So I don't see the machines, any spontaneous combustion or the warehouse burning down in the meantime. Mr. Coos has mentioned that there's no additional cost. So where's the harm in not following the procedure and taking the time to do it correctly? That's all.
Okay, thanks, Brent. So
Thank you.
now I'd like to ask James a few questions.
Thank you.
Based on that. Thank you.
Supervisor.
Yes, James, and thank you for doing another good job during this election season. But I do share, and James, you and I, we've talked, 25 times. I share a lot of concerns. But focusing today on the public process that Brent just talked about, so when do you envision a time that we could go out to competitive bid? It feels like we are in this kind of always in a trap chasing our tail.
So it's my understanding, and we don't have purchasing here, is that we go out to competitive bid when we have a need for new services or equipment. So I can say from my department's perspective, there is no need as of today for new equipment. We have some 400 pieces of Dominion equipment, all of which is about the midpoint of its life cycle. And we paid money for that 5 years ago. And it is cost effective to the county to continue to use that to the end of its life cycle. So that is, I can say right now, why the department didn't even consider going out to bid for complete new services. Because we have equipment that works, we have equipment that's worked and done its job perfectly for 19 elections. And we anticipate it continuing for the next 5 years. Now, we do believe that at the end of that 5-year period, potentially before then, but our hope is 5 years, that it will be an end of cycle and it will be appropriate. And something that we need to do is to go out and take a look and see, is there new equipment that is going to better service Fresno County at this time?
Okay.
There have not been any significant changes equipment-wise in the certified vendors. There have been software updates, but there haven't been any significant equipment changes since 5 years ago. So if we went out to RFP right now, we would be looking at the same 3 qualified vendors, basically giving us the same equipment, potentially with updated software.
Okay.
So from that standpoint is why the department did not go forward, because from a cost-effective standpoint, we have $4 million worth of equipment, and we are going to get our money's worth out of that equipment that does its job.
Right. Okay.
Now, there was some questions about the suspension of competition. Why did we do that here? We have Dominion equipment. We use Dominion software that is proprietary software. And the equipment, while not explicitly, some of it is proprietary Dominion equipment, some of it is off the shelf. The other vendors are not certified to support that equipment. So only Dominion is qualified to currently support that equipment, which is why we did a suspension of competition for this contract. If we went to an RFP for the license, warranty, and support services that make up this contract, we would only receive one qualified bid, and that would be from Dominion. They're the only people that are certified to support the equipment that we currently have.
And since we know that, it just makes sense to suspend that. I mean, there's not going to be another company that's even in that space that's certified on this particular equipment, right? They all have their own brand. You know,
Exactly. Yes, they do.
They're not interested in servicing software for Dominion's brand. I mean, the point for this competitive, seems to me, Brent, that the point for this competitive analysis, which I think is a valid concern, is when this equipment's toast and, you know, it needs to be replaced, right? So now the only other thing is just to not do anything about it and then run afoul of just a big nightmare. But James, while I have you here, and I know I'm pushing my colleagues a little bit on this, but I do want to take advantage of a couple of the other comments that came up today, right? And I do feel, and I know most everybody that spoke, and so in reality, everybody in this crowd wants to get back to hand counting. Okay, that's the real truth, okay? So can we count ballots by hand? And maybe, Dan, if you want to chime in, can we do that in California now, or what's the latest?
California is illegal to do a primary tabulation of an election by hand. It is required that you do audits by hand.
Okay.
But you cannot do the primary tabulation by hand. You must use a certified voting system to do that primary tabulation.
All right. So see, to change that, folks, you got to change the governor. You got to change the game, right? You got to change the assembly members, the Senate members. They have to make a different decision. Right now, they've set the rules of the game, and so Fresno County, and I don't think Kern County might have a quote precinct model, but they're still counting this stuff electronically. Okay. Now, I'm not opposed to a precinct model, but that's not what we're talking about today. So I feel you. And James, my final question, and I know I'm pushing my colleagues, but we brought you up many months ago. The folks here today all know about this, and we gave you an additional personnel to help us clean up voter rolls, okay? So can you real quickly talk to that? Because I want to say one more time, this happened to me knocking on doors within the last 3 months. You see John Smith, 47-year-old male, and then right underneath him in the same household, John A. Smith, 47-year-old male. Now, maybe there is 2 John Smiths that are both 47 males at that same address, right? But there's a lot of that stuff going on. So talk to me about cleanup of our voter rolls with this personnel.
So we did receive the additional staff analyst position, and we did fill that staff analyst position. They have been working now about 5 months. And they didn't particularly have that much time before the election to start their first actually major project on that specifically to them will actually be right here after the election, where we will follow federal NVRA rules and actually have a very large cleaning project that we're able to do. I can almost say that it wasn't even their project. You may have actually heard that we have had a few voters that were misclassified during this election. And unfortunately, that was a part of us trying to do efforts like that to try and clean stuff up and clean up the rolls.
Okay, so
we
when
do
you get
need
a
to be
little bit
careful.
more time, what are you
Well,
going
yes, and it's not even so much that we need more time. It's when you're in an election, I'm not allowed to touch the rolls for that type of aggressive project cleaning 90 days before the election. Federal law says that, and state law supports that you don't do projects like that. So when we brought this staffer in, that focus, it had to be on the election itself. And so registration activities and other stuff on that election. Now, as we come out of it, we don't have a statewide election. We don't have any limits on what we can do, and we can actually really kind of knuckle down and start going after that a little more aggressively.
Yeah, all right. I think everybody will be happy with that, because at the end of the day, we do want to create, or we want to be as do a good a job as we can with our voter rolls in Fresno County. And so I appreciate that. And Supervisor Mendez was actually the one that made the motion for that. So I know there's a lot of great concern to continue building trust in our county. I do want to, just yesterday I saw that Dinesh D'Souza, who did this movie 2,000 Mules, talking about how terrible the voting was. Dinesh D'Souza came out himself yesterday and said that his whole movie was based on faulty information given to him by True the Vote. And so it's very interesting that Dinesh himself said that. So I appreciate your time, James, and thanks to everybody who spoke today.
All right, any other questions for James?
I would have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Coos, Mrs. Richardson very eloquently laid out over the last 5 years how this keeps coming to the board and coming to the board and coming to the board. If we were to approve this today, we're not going to address this issue again until the end of the life, or are you going to keep coming back to the board? And my other question is, why is this agreement retroactive? Why are we going back until May? Why wasn't this handled in May?
So I don't like it being retroactive. I don't like that the last 3 contracts that have come up here, and as was pointed out, have all been retroactive. All 3 of those contracts, we began discussions with the vendor at least 6 months beforehand. And we ran into issues. All of those contracts, the previous contract was before the most recent update to the base county contract. And those vendors did not agree to what is now parts of our base county contract. In some cases, in the end, we actually agreed with those vendors, but it took time to go through that discussion and that negotiation, and it was longer than anticipated for all 3 of those, and ended up even more so with one of those 3. That's not good. In the case of the recent Pro Vote one, it was a couple weeks because we went out and we did that RFP.
So what I hear you saying, James, and I'm sorry to cut you
That's
off, Brian,
fine.
but what I hear you saying is you actually started this discussion a year ago with Dominion, because that would be 6 months from May, the expiration of this contract this year. So I just wanted to make that clear, that this isn't something that you just started a week ago or a couple weeks ago. You started a year ago?
Yeah, and and all of our discussions have always been, positive. Sometimes a vendor may say, no, we won't agree to this portion, and then we are working with them and to try to get agreement so that we are providing the services and providing protections as the county has deemed necessary in the base contract. One of the things is.
I do remember, James, in the past, once you said that, I do remember that we had asked for some additional safeguards, and you were negotiating that, and that's why that had happened. I can tell you it's unfortunate if that's happening again. I can tell you, for me, as an individual business person, if there are other companies out there that do that, I appreciate that. I do, as the lady said, we are very fiscally responsible here. I do appreciate you getting the life out of these machines, because once we purchase them, they're ours. I believe it would not be fiscally prudent to dismantle them in a midlife cycle unless there was some compelling reason. I was pleased to hear today that you said in a world that has very little certainty or 100%, that you publicly stated these machines were 100% accurate. Not 90, not 95, not 98, not 99. We're 100% accurate, and our mistakes come by human error, which everything we've had in the news over the last 30, 60 days, it's human error. We leave a key in a box, we do other things, it's all human error, but these machines have performed 100% accuracy, which gives me some comfort. I can tell you, though, I am tired of constantly hearing this topic. I am tired of hearing the vendor does not respond to our needs. So I would hope that this would be the last contract that comes before this board before we go out to bid and see if this system is the best available in the future. I will publicly state I will support this one more time for the reasons you gave. I think you had very valid reasons as to why there was no competitive bid, because if it's proprietary, I get it. If we got any other vendor, we would have the same issue with the other vendor. But if you come back to this body, as long as I'm here, and over the next 4 to 5 years, whatever this is, and we do another contract, I'm telling you I'm going to vote no every time. I'm done. So we either get it right with this contract, and for any reason, I'm not going to support this system anymore, and I don't care if we go out and we have to spend millions of dollars to get a new system. If that vendor is not responsive to your needs in a timely fashion, I'm done with that vendor. And I'm only one member, as my colleagues, but enough is enough.
I think that I actually agree conceptually. I mean, we've been great partners.
Right.
Dominion has really worked with us, even when we are disagreeing in that contract. They've been working with us throughout that process. One of the reasons why I am looking at 5 years from now is because software updates are happening all the time. Software updates are part of the contract that we have right now, and the other voting systems are getting that. The other systems are getting new contracts between now and that 5 years. We are ahead of most of the other counties looking at new contracts and re-upping contracts, because many counties got new voting systems in 2020 because the Secretary of State decertified all of the old systems between the elections. We were ahead of that curve. And so we have experienced some difficulties where we may have made updates to our requirements ahead of other counties. Sometimes other counties did have some of those requirements, and so we've worked with vendors, but as a total, I've had several vendors tell me that other counties aren't at. Now, that's could be part of the deal, that, oh, you guys are asking for something that is new. I don't think it's going to be particularly new 5 years from now. It's going to be the basic thing that everyone's going to have to do, whether it be Dominion, whether it be ES&S, or whether it be HART. They're going to have to meet us and our requirements for cybersecurity, for other support and physical
And again, Mr.
support.
Coos, Supervisor Mendes and I were on the initial committee that when we had a vacancy, we recommended you to the board. You have since been to an election of the people and have been reelected. I have high confidence in your skill and your ability, as have everyone who comes forward and complains about the system you're using they still give you credibility because you reach out to the people, you're transparent. And to this day, I still believe you're doing the best job possible with what you have to work with. So I have high confidence in what you bring to the board. But again, as Mr. Burdine stated, public confidence is everything. And we have a duty to instill that and to keep that coming forward. Again, if a company won't work with me after 30, 60, or 90 days, I'm done with that company as an individual. I believe in public, you have a little bit different system. Your hands are tied a little bit more than we are in the private sector. But after 90 days, if you can't work out an agreement, that we have to have an agreement 7 months after it was due, that is unacceptable for me as an individual. So again, hopefully this is the last time that we have to deal with this until the life of these machines are done and we can go out to bid and help to instill the confidence that Mr. Burdine is requesting in the system, the process, and everything else in between. Because as Ms. Richardson very eloquently stated, we're not in a March primary anymore. We have plenty of time, but I'll support you again, but this is my last time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.
Any other comments? We've closed the public portion. It's now time to make motions. So we have the item before us. Is there a motion
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
for staff's recommendation?
Staff's recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
All right. Passes 4 with 1 opposed. Thank you, James, and thank you, public, for being here.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, we need to bring back item number 6. As in order for staff to continue to work with the Dunlap Cemetery District, we will need a motion from this board.
And this is my fault, so thank you for item 6 coming back. Any members of the public wishing to comment on the Dunlap Cemetery District? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion, and I would make a motion that staff comes back on June 30th, 2025 with an update to update us on this board. And I think the reason for this is the motion is the date specific to June 30th, 2025. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
We now move to item number 8. Under Sheriff, Coroner, Public Administrator, approve and authorize the chairman to execute amendment number 7 to agreement with California Forensic Medical Group.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Samantha Beck, County Administrative Office. The item before your board will approve the county's largest contract, which is for jail, medical, mental health services. The potential cost of this agreement for the 5-year term is approximately $200 million. The term of this agreement is now going to be a county base, 3-year base with 2 optional 1-year extensions. Now, for the format of this presentation, I'll provide your board with a history on how we arrived here. We've been in negotiations with WellPath for the past 2 years. We'll talk about the fiscal impact of this agreement to the county, and then also I have subject matter experts to address any questions that your board may have. For the history, the county began negotiations with WellPath in November of 2022 under a suspension of competition approved by your board. This suspension was put in place to allow for continuity of operations and then also continual implementation of the remedial plan. As your board's aware, the county is under a remedial plan due to the Quinton Hall settlement. Several months were spent working on the negotiation process that included working with WellPath to obtain data and justification for the staffing matrix of 159.6 positions. As you recall in the agenda item, this provides for continuation of an additional 39.6 full-time equivalent positions that were added for COVID-related expenses and paid for with the use of ARPA funds. Working with WellPath, it was found that these positions were required due to ongoing operational needs and compliance with the remedial plan. Based on this change in funding, what this means for next fiscal year, if no other funding sources change to this agreement, the switch from ARPA, this will now be an $8 million increase in net county costs for next fiscal year. The funding sources for this agreement are net county cost, 91 realignment, and Prop 172 funds. Now, I have, of course, our subject matter experts are Paul Nerland, our CIO, and Paige Benavides here, who will address the budget impact, how we plan on covering that increase, and what that means in terms going forward for countywide discretionary revenues and Prop 172 funds. I want to also make note that WellPath is currently working through a bankruptcy process to restructure debts. We have staff from WellPath, Cole Casey, the interim CEO, and Stefan Kange, their counsel. They are here to address what that's going to look like in terms of operations as they work through that restructure process. I also have here Under Sheriff McComas. He'll address any operational questions and provide a status update on the remedial plan. He can also speak to the new West Annex Jail opening and finding of operational efficiencies and use of new technologies with the new facility. Lastly, I want to note that staff will return to your board early next year to address the increase in the agreement, which will result in a shortfall in the sheriff's budget. We want to be sure to do that ahead of the mid-year budget process so we can ensure sufficient cash flow for the sheriff's office and organize the budget monitoring going forward. This concludes my presentation. Staff's available should you have specific questions.
Questions for staff? Yes,
Yes,
Brian.
what's the anticipated shortfall?
Beginning next year.
Yeah, at this point in time.
If no change in funding, it's going to be an $8 million hit to net county costs next year, an $8 million increase in net county costs next year alone.
Thank you.
Paul.
If I can add a few things, I want to thank Sam for the presentation and her coordination of this. This was a project working closely, obviously, with the Sheriff's Office, also with the other departments that are closely involved with this. That's our Public Health Department and our Behavioral Health Department. So this is a massive contract. What I want to share, Sam mentioned, an almost $8 million increase for next year, but that assumes the use of additional Prop 172 revenues, which we all know are flattening. And so we're going to be closely looking at those revenue sources, not just net county costs, but also 91 realignment. I do need to say that it's almost a certainty that there would be some cuts in the future we're going to need to make if these costs increase as the contract is projected to show them increasing. So I'll be working with all the departments to determine what that looks like, and coming back to your board later this year to make those recommendations. But I just want to make that announcement here once we continue that process.
And Paul, a general question I have. So as I understand it, when we take possession of an inmate, we are fully responsible for their health care needs. Is that correct? Medi-Cal doesn't reimburse us. It is a fully burdened county cost. Is that correct?
That's correct, and this contract includes us taking over some costs that we didn't before, like congregate care, which is something that the county will be fully paying for. So when we've got someone that needs to go to a facility that the county's paying for, that's something that is now being paid for completely by the department, by the county. The other thing I'll add is at the recent CSAC conference, and as I meet with CAOs around the state, this is a statewide issue and concern. And what I mean by that is just the cost of jail medical and how this can be controlled. And so it's something that we're part of. There's a committee that's meeting in this regard, but I found that we are not alone in dealing with this issue.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Steve McComas, Under Sheriff, Fresno County. Chairman, to your question, you're correct. For the most part, all of the costs when an inmate gets actually accepted in the jail becomes basically under the care and custody of the jail. All the costs are the county costs. There are a couple of exceptions. When an inmate goes out to the hospital and is actually admitted to the hospital, those costs are covered under Medi-Cal inmate enrollment program, which we work with the public health to receive those funds. There's also what's called CalAIM funding that's going to come on later, hopefully in 2025, that we're going to be able to recoup some of those costs through Medi-Cal also. Those are not in place yet, so we're not counting on those costs as part of this contract, but that's something we're looking for in the future.
Well, that's good news, and a little bit of good news there. So,
yes.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Amazing. I'm going to close the public portion, and I want to just state this is, I believe, the largest contract that the county of Fresno has. hundreds of millions of dollars. And laws that the state of California has really ties our hand, and we provide the care that the state of California says that we have to provide. And where I'm a little bit flummoxed is the fact that the state of California continues to expand who they cover under Medi-Cal, but when we provide services in our jail for people who would have been covered by Medi-Cal outside, we now are fully burdened by that cost.
And you know why?
Buddy.
Because this oligarchy that runs the state, they do this just because they don't want people behind bars. And this is a way to keep people behind bars that it burdens all local government. And the state should be paying for this. But we need to get rid of that dictatorship that's in Sacramento if we want to fix this. That's all I got to say about this.
There may be an opportunity, I think, to maybe ask for some of our legislators in Sacramento to introduce a bill that would maybe provide a little bit of relief through Medi-Cal for services that we provide in the jail. Especially, we have inmates that are diabetic. We have inmates that, some have hepatitis, some have AIDS and other types of diseases that require very expensive medications. So I think we might want to take a look at getting some legislation introduced, because otherwise the state would be paying for it. Why should we be burdened because this person's committed a crime? Why does the local jurisdiction, why are we being punished for this?
And there is some hope to that, Mr. Chairman. The Medi-Cal will pay through Cal-AIM the last 90 days of an inmate's stay. Most of those chronic care conditions, a lot of that will be reimbursable to the county that will seek those funds. And the good news is that program was set up primarily for a state prison where the sentences are long. Well, the average length of stay for a jail inmate is right around 30 to 35 days. So all of that 90 days is recoverable, we believe. So we think we'll be able to recover some of those portions that we can reimburse and go towards this contract in the future.
That'll be great. All right, thank you. Anyone in the public? I already closed the public. No one wanted to comment. So any other comments from board members? All right, time for motions then at this point. Is there a motion? For a historic contract, don't all jump at the opportunity. We've got a motion by Buddy Mendez. Is there a second for staff's recommendation?
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you.
We now move to item number 9 under the Administrative Office, receive report from state legislative advocates on the state of California's 2024 legislative session.
And we have Paul, who's traveled all the way here from Sacramento, who does great work. Buddy and I had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Paul at CSAC, and he is here to enlighten us. So with that, Paul, Sam, please introduce Paul, anything that you'd like to do, and then we'll have Paul begin his introduction.
Yeah, good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Samantha Buck, again, Deputy CAO. As you mentioned, we have Paul Yoder, our state legislative advocate. He is, I just want to say, he's absolutely amazing. I haven't told him this, but I do consider him one of my mentors. I really appreciate everything that he does. He works steadfastly. He's available all hours of the day. I try to keep it to 7:30 in the morning, not before then, but even on Sundays, he's available. And he will provide a report out on the last legislative session and what to expect going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That was very nice. And right back at you. Mr. Chairman, board members, members of the public, good to see you all. Thank you for letting me present. So let's talk about the election first and its potential impacts on counties. I think the ones that merit the most discussion are Propositions 35, 36, and 4. And especially for folks listening at home, Proposition 35 had to do with the so-called Managed Care Organization Tax. It was sponsored by the California Medical Association. Proposition 36 had to do with changing the definition of crime, most specifically with respect to retail theft over $950. Proposition 4 was a natural resources water bond. Those are the three that, in terms of their impacts, we could talk about them a little bit during questions and answers, but very briefly right now, Proposition 35 directs money that would otherwise go into the state's general fund for things like distressed hospitals and medical specialties. Just to give you an example, psychiatry, right, that is provided through Medi-Cal. It will divert in the next budget year approximately $2 to $3 billion out of the state's general fund into those purposes. Okay, so it helps hospitals on one hand, but there is a diversion of money out of the general fund on the other. So the implications are complex on Proposition 35, and again, happy to take questions about it later. Proposition 36, especially after the item you just took, that redefinition of what is a felony in California, counties are going to see some inmates, individuals who are currently inmates in county facilities, eligible to go to the state. And it's been a while since that happened. On the other hand, you're probably going to see an influx of individuals just in your county jail generally. And so how that washes out remains to be seen. But that's the thing I wanted to highlight right now. And then Proposition 4, the Natural Resources Water Bond, that's billions of dollars for projects. And the thing I really want to make sure I point out today is Proposition 1 passed, the Mental Health Initiative, right, on the primary ballot. Next thing we know, within, I think it was 60, 90 days, the governor said, I want to take over half of the bond proceeds from Prop 1 to New York, to Wall Street. I want to sell them. I want to get that money. I want to do a NOFA, an RFP, and I want counties and cities and non-governmental entities, private sector interests, eligible to submit bids to build out the beds infrastructure in California for severely mentally ill and substance use using individuals, severely substance use using individuals. That happened in a matter of months. Now, it was easier to do that because a lot of the cups, if you will, that the money's going to flow into, they already existed in state government. But still, the point I'm making with Proposition 4 is you may see a move for the governor and the legislature to take some of that money back to Wall Street. And the next thing you know, 6-9 months from now, counties and cities and NGOs and private sector interests can apply to get money out of that resources bond. And so the thing I want to highlight today is that we all have to be ready for that, right? Just like we needed to be ready for Prop 1, that money being accessible. And so soon after the voters said yes. So yesterday in Sacramento was the first day of the 2025, the 2-year 2025-2026 legislative session. First day. Tradition is they come in for one day, they get sworn in, right? They high five, get to see each other, socialize a little bit, and even introduce some bills. So yesterday we saw the introduction of just over 100 new bills. I think it was about 2/3 of those in the Assembly and about 1/3 of them in the Senate, which is what you would expect given the how the seats break down in both houses. I think probably the thing we've already done, the search that we do every day that the legislature's in session to see if there's anything of interest to Fresno County. There isn't. I'm happy to report, at least not that we found yet. So there's nothing on your radar screen, 100 bills, right? And 0 that we have to track so far. On the other hand, as you know, the governor called a special session, right? And I forget exactly what the title is, and I apologize, but called a special session to the purpose of which is going to be really as quickly as they can, the legislature in January, to appropriate money specifically to the state's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, but also to civil prosecutors in California, some county councils, some city attorneys who want to litigate issues that have arisen or could arise when the next president of the United States is sworn in. And I don't know a nicer way to put that. That's what they're doing. And you can look it up yourself. It's in AB X11 and SB X11. And we say X1 because it's the first extraordinary session. So we have a different way to notate those bills. In both of those bills, there is $25 to $35 million, again, for the state's attorney general and for prosecutors at the local level to litigate certain issues. And so you should expect, the public should expect action on those bills in January in the extraordinary session. So when I said they're here for one day, they leave for a little over a month. They come back on January 6th. Soon after, just a couple days later, Governor Newsom will announce his proposed 25-26 state budget. On that, legislative analysts recently said we, the state, are probably about $2 billion more to the bad, right? So the deficit has increased, maybe not as much as some folks would have thought, However, I just want to note for the supervisors today that there are interesting developments on both sides of the ledger. So what do I mean by that? I'd say to the good, we have 4 straight months of revenues exceeding expectations. I think the last 4 or 5 times I've come, we've talked about the stock market indices and their impacts on capital gains. Anybody that has stock right now knows that the markets are doing pretty well, okay? And it's not just that the markets are doing well. An interesting thing that fiscal folks in Sacramento are now tracking, and I am not making this up, are the salaries made by the 5 largest companies in the Silicon Valley that are just sort of going through the roof. The quantity is increasing, the number of people that they're hiring, and I would say quality, but the amount of compensation is so high that is now a sort of trackable event for the state of California. And so you have income on one hand, again, focused in Silicon Valley, and then you have the capital gains that folks are going to take by the end of the year. We think probably a couple $2 billion more to the good, okay? So that's on one side of the ledger. On the other side of the ledger, I think we talked last time about the deal last year on Proposition 98. The hope that is a $9 billion issue that we're talking about. The hope at the time in Sacramento was that when they put this in legislation that no one would litigate. Well, they were wrong, and there is litigation. And the belief is that ultimately the litigants will prevail. And what that means is this governor and the next legislature, I can say this legislature now that they've been sworn in, they're going to have to re-budget and revisit that deal that involves $9 billion to the schools, the public schools in California, and Prop 98. That's one thing. Thing number 2, I mentioned the MCO tax and the couple $1 billion that comes out of the general fund. That's thing number 2. Thing number 3, I have more examples, but I'm just going to give you 3 this morning. Thing number 3 is probably just Medi-Cal spending in general. And again, to the last issue that you discussed with the sheriff, it continues to rise. There is uncertainty about things that could happen in Washington, D.C., and I don't want anybody to be surprised if all of a sudden the federal government is block granting money to the states, and maybe California is getting 90 cents on the dollar, and that's something that the legislature and the governor will have to deal with. Okay, so I just want to be frank with y'all. One last example, and I was reminded of it this morning. The Employment Development Department and the state's Unemployment Insurance Fund currently owes the federal government $20 billion because of unemployment claims. And everybody remembers COVID and EDD and everything that happened there. You sort of lose track of it sometimes, but I just want to make sure you all know the current tally is $20 billion. At some point, that bill has to be paid. So wrapping up here and happy to take some questions. We will, actually another piece of good news. Looks like the Senate will limit itself, instead of 50 bills per member, they will limit themselves to 35. And the Assembly likewise will go from 40 to 35. That's just a lot less bills to track. And so we're happy about that. Hopefully they'll stick to that. The deadline to introduce new legislation is Friday, February 20th. Looking back, I didn't do a whole lot of look back, but looking back at 2024, we stopped a lot of bad bills. Our firm, working in conjunction with CSAC and RCRC and the Urban Counties Caucus and others, we stopped a lot of bad bills. A couple of them slipped through. Sorry about that, but we stopped way more than got through. And on the Westlands Water District legislation, happy that the community benefits language got in there. Hopeful about what that can mean to the communities here locally, and we'll be following up on that, I'm sure, in 2025 with the author. You got a little bit of change in your legislative delegation, but you also have some continuity, members returning who are in very key positions. And so we're encouraged by the strength of your delegation heading into 2025. Thank you for letting me present, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take questions.
A couple quick comments. So Rivas was voted in as Speaker again of the Assembly. and I got to hear some of his comments, but he really focused in on housing affordability and wanting to build more housing. So I think it's going to be interesting what the legislature comes up with, since that appears to be a priority of his this next session. From the Senate and Assembly side, based upon the presentations that were given by the speakers, who both were renominated and won their spots again, did you hear anything out of the ordinary from either the Senate or the Assembly on what they want to focus on in this next legislative session?
I appreciate the question. Did you say out of the ordinary, Mr.
Out of
Chair?
the ordinary.
Out of the ordinary. I think, this we are going to see, this is the second go-round, if you will, between Governor Newsom and President-elect Trump. And I think, there is going to be back and forth, and that's probably the nicest way to put it. So that is going to happen. But any other, issues that, for example, we might not have seen 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I don't think there really is anything like that. Go back to the budget. I think just to sum up our outlook on the budget, it's probably going to feel a lot like status quo. I think those two sides of the ledger that I referenced, they're going to more or less wash each other out. And I think they may have to trim a little bit, but by and large, it'll hopefully be, not a lot of cuts. We might actually see more money for care court, to give you one example, just because all 58 counties obviously have to implement it now. So I think there's even room for some augmentations. But in terms of policy, it's a little too early to say, just because 1/4 of the legislature is new. There are a couple members, new members, and I got to tip my hat to them. They were ready to go yesterday. There's one new member of the legislature. I think he introduced six bills out of the 100 were his. So we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the new members want to focus on, because there are so many of them.
Excellent. Any questions for Paul?
This is just, you've been at this game a long time. And, you were talking about, stopping a lot of bills last year, but didn't you feel at times that they were coming on faster than you can catch them?
Yes. Through the chair, yes. But I do, it's my opportunity, I guess. Thank you for the question, Supervisor. It's an opportunity to thank you all, because you are great partners in a lot of those endeavors. Direct contact with your legislators, it matters. The same thing happening from other supervisors in other counties up and down the valley. It absolutely mattered. You've heard me say it before, but I like to say it in public. Your active involvement, the fact that you track and you care about legislation as it moves through the process in Sacramento, it's really my pleasure to work for you, to be able to partner with you like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think you'll agree that Samantha's been a great student of this.
This is my opportunity to say, whatever you're paying Samantha Buck, it might not be enough.
Yeah.
She, or maybe
we just gave all the money to the jail medical.
You did.
There's none left.
Right. Or maybe, well, it's weird that I say that, because she said 7:30, and I think my phone log would indicate differently. But yeah, she's amazing. She's because that's true about her too, right? Something is really top of mind or critically important for the county. 7:00 in the morning, hey, you got a minute? 9:00 at night, hey, you got a minute? So we're a great team. We want to keep that team together. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, I want to follow up, and thanks for being a great partner for Fresno County. I want to follow up on the housing element that Chairman Magsic brought up with Leader Rivas. Do you have any inclinations, the directions they want to take with the housing in the state?
I think it could, thank you for the question, Supervisor, through the chair. I think it could go two different ways. Especially, I want to give recognition to Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, who this fall had a bunch of informational hearings throughout California looking at permitting reform. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something they know they can do more about, and that's the majority party talking about that, and just understanding that, especially the ones that served in local government, it's just still too much, right? There's just there's too much process in a lot of people's view, and I think you are going to see legislation on that. The other thing is, we had the natural resources bond, we had the schools bond, but I want to remind everybody there was a housing bond that was in the mix, and at some point we have to start talking about the debt service again, that we have in California. Costs $600 million ultimately over 20, 25, 30 years, $600 million for every billion that the voters approve. I see nodding heads up here. I don't know if there's nodding heads behind me, but $600 million, it doesn't happen all at once, again, over 20, 25, 30 years. But if you have multiple bonds that have been approved, so 600 million plus 600 million plus 600 million, it's been a long time since we talked about you're not supposed to exceed debt service being 5 or 6% of the state's general fund revenues, and we're not close to that right now, as far as I know, because the state budget grew so much, especially during COVID. But at some point, you do have to talk about that. But I think a housing bond, especially since the last two passed and Prop 1 passed, we have 3 bonds that have passed now after the voters said no twice previously. And so I think a housing bond on the 2026 ballot is another thing you can look at for that.
Okay.
I think those will be the 2 biggest areas of focus.
And the permitting issue, to me, has a lot of promise to it if done correctly. But I've also seen taking away local control over how neighborhoods are established, and I've had that impact in District 2. And it's caused a lot of heartburn because there's a lot of by right stuff that gets allowed to happen where they don't even have to check in with Fresno County, the city of Fresno, and it can backfire. So, we need to pay attention to that. I did want to follow up on the whole Governor Newsom and President-elect Trump situation, because I've read a lot about, a lot of that focuses on immigration. Have you heard anything about how that would impact Fresno County, or would it be more statewide situation or by county interpretation of rules and appealing to immigration?
Yeah, I am. And thank you, Supervisor, for that question through the chair. Just to be clear, there are issues, where the president-elect and the governor, they're not in perfect agreement, but they are in near agreement. For example, water, right? And I just saw that the state said their first indication of deliveries is 5% after the wet year we had last year. And so, that may actually be to the good for Fresno and farmers and communities. And then there are other issues where they're just going to be a swords points, right? On immigration, it seems to us that what will happen first is that the federal government will work first with governors and states that want to work with the federal government on that issue. What happens in California, that may be honestly one of the most pitched battles of all the battles that we could see. And I don't know how to, I just want to shoot straight with you.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
And then inside of that battle, which is unfortunate, but it's like you said, it is what it is. What I could perceive is, and you just kind of glossed over it real quickly, California can make a rule, and then the federal government could say, well, if that's the way you guys want to interpret your rule or play ball, then we're going to withhold funds from that state that's unwilling to see it the way the federal government sees it. And then those costs might be pushed onto Fresno County or other counties to accomplish what the governor wants to accomplish if the federal government withholds money. Is that a possibility?
Through the chair, absolutely. And on that EDD example I gave that example because it's a large tab. It's due at some point, but we may not yet be in the situation where we're done wanting to borrow. The state of California, might want to borrow more, and you have to ask yourself, well, what are the odds? What are the odds of an extension on the loan or more money being loaned? Maybe not. Maybe zero. And I think we all understand there's only one other option at that point as to how you start eating at that $20 billion debt, and that is to start on everybody's paycheck, right? Everybody's paycheck, every employer, every employee, to start getting more money to pay back that EDD debt. So I talked about block granting, Supervisor. There's a lot of, how about this? Because I don't mean to gloss over everything, but
Understood.
I
It's
do
still
want
early.
to, choose my words carefully. There are some scenarios where I don't want anybody to be surprised where Governor Newsom says, well, we're going to have a second extraordinary session, and we got to clear the deck, we got to clear the table, excuse me, and for the next month, as long as it takes, the federal government's just taken this raft of actions that apply to healthcare. Let's say, I think that's the best example. And we don't want those actions to, we want to maintain the status quo at a minimum, right? For individuals who receive services in California. And we have to hunker down in a second extraordinary session, and we're going to try to figure out how to do that. And the governor's indicated that. So I'm not just so we're clear, I'm not making this up, right? This isn't even my conjecture. The governor has stated, basically as much, that there are a lot of circumstances where he may just say to the legislature, this is the focus, right? You can introduce 5,000 bills, but this is what we're going to focus on for a while. So, I just keep telling everybody, I'm going to show up every day, right? And optimistic and ready to go to work, and that's what you all do, and that's what your department heads do, and we'll figure it out, because we always
Appreciate
do.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Paul, I want to thank you for the years that you've been with Fresno County advocating for us in Sacramento, but also the keeping us apprised of a lot of the issues that are important to us. So really appreciate the work you've done. You mentioned earlier about, made a comment about EDD and the monies that they have that it may be cut back. One of the things I'm interested in, I know that EDD has some programs for farm workers to where they work with the farm workers to provide jobs for them out in the communities and in the farms. Will that be affected quite a bit, do you think, or money's cut back, or?
Through the chair, thank you, Supervisor, for the question. I don't think any money, right now I'm not aware of any effort to cut back on benefits or access to benefits. I think what's more likely is, as I described, the fund may just need more money into it. And the only option, like I said, if the federal government won't loan more money to the state of California, then they're going to have to increase the deductions.
Then it'll be up to each county to make it up?
No, it'll be a state action, and it'll be deductions on our paychecks that'll go up, but it'll be a state action. Not up to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. This is just a receive and file item, and I know that our county will continue to work with you very closely, and we appreciate the presentation and you making the drive down. So we'll see you soon, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisors. Take care. Yep. Happy holidays.
We now move to item number 10 under the Administrative Office. Approve and authorize chairman to execute a supplemental fire services agreement with the Fresno County Fire Protection District.
Amina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The item before you is a recommended agreement to temporarily provide supplemental funding to the Fresno County Fire Protection District while a long-term sustainable alternative is identified. The supplemental funding was requested by Fresno County Fire due to recent increases in costs for protection services, specifically to the unprotected land in the Fresno County region, which is approximately 998,000 acres. I want to note that the FY 24-25 adopted budget includes sufficient appropriations for the first year of the recommended three-year agreement. And should this item be approved today, sufficient appropriations will be included in the recommended budgets for the next 2 years. Here to answer any questions your board may have specifically to the district is Chief Dustin Hale.
Thank you, Chairman, board members. Dustin Hale, Fresno County Fire Protection District Chief and the Unit Chief for CAL FIRE. I just want to thank you guys for the support, the relationship that we've had over the several years. As you guys know, the county has seen significant emergency responses, whether it's the winter months, the summer months, and our partnership has been great. And so I just look forward to our relationship, and we are better together.
So, Chief, if you can talk a little bit, I think the state of California passed a new requirement when it comes to staffing of engines. So a question that I'm being asked is, what has happened with the funding source? Because I think right now there's property taxes that are collected. The fire district has taxing authority. But one of the major issues is just raises that the state has given to CAL FIRE, but then staffing is really driving these costs up. Can you talk briefly about that?
Yeah, so for decades, CAL FIRE has staffed their resources on a 72-hour work week, which is a 3 on, 4 off. Through the state legislature and the governor's office and the union, they implemented what's called a 66-hour work week. And that is, as a result, is a reduction in hours per month. But it's getting in line with fire service standards of hours worked. The mental health, the physical strain. Most fire departments, if not all fire departments, work a 56-hour work week. So they have asked us to build out a 3-person per seat. Doesn't mean 3 people on an engine, but it's a staffing model that puts 3 bodies to fill 1 chair. And so when we do that, that increases our staffing levels upwards of 17 positions. And so it's an amazing move forward for the department, for the men and women that serve Fresno County and CAL FIRE, and it gets us totally in line with the industry standard of a 56-hour work week. So until we get to a 56-hour work week with the union and the legislature, that will allow the next level from a 66 to a 56. And so as we continue to work forward with different funding models, this allows us that temporary gap so that we can continue to serve the county as a whole.
And I think what the county was facing, really level of service is not increasing, but this is just enough to bridge the gap between the shortfall over the next 3 years that we expect from these new legislative changes to provide the same level of service. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So appreciate you. You've been very transparent, open. Messaging that you send out regarding different incidences is greatly appreciated. You work well with our OES division. It's been a pleasure to work with you as not only the chief of Fresno County Fire Protection District, but also the Fresno Kings Unit CAL FIRE chief. So we do need to find a way, a permanent funding stream, because as we are seeing between our jail medical contract, just employee costs in general, this not unexpected cost, but the 3-year contract that we're contemplating right now does have components to it that are unexpected for the next 3 years. So we are continuing to see some strains on our budget, and I think because we've been prudent the last 8 years, 10 years, it's allowed us to be able to have some flexibility to provide to make sure that level of service is maintained here in the county. But these are some things which are concerning to me, and I know our CAO's office will bring back some options to us soon on maybe what can be done to provide some more permanent funding streams to the Fresno County Fire Protection District. Any other comments from members? All right, this is a public item. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back for action.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes unanimously.
Thank you, board. Appreciate the support.
We now move to item number 11, consider and take action on changing the County of Fresno policy for use of public financing for private development projects.
And I will turn it over to Paige.
Good morning, Board. Paige Benavides, County Budget Director. Since 1997, the Board of Supervisors has not considered issuing public bonds for private residential development. On March 14, 2023, your board, by motion, approved changing the county's financing policy for private development projects to resume the board's consideration of such requests from private developers for the county to use land-secured public bonds for residential development projects under the Melrose Act. In giving that approval, your board added a condition that community service districts, or CSDs, shall be formed. Your board directed staff to return with changes to the financing policy, adding the CSD condition. Your board expressed the intention that a resident-governed CSD shall be used instead of county service areas to own and operate the bond to finance public improvements. In conferring with County Counsel's office, we have since determined that the formation of a CSD at the time a private developer seeks county public bond financing for a residential development project may not accomplish your board, I should say, may not, emphasis on may not, accomplish your board's express intention. This is a policy question that we need your board to resolve, and this is discussed in detail in the board item, but if your board wishes to entertain a discussion about it, Mr. Malakian is here to explain the issues.
Questions for staff? All right, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Mr. Roberts, I see you out there, and I think you might want to comment.
I thought he was shaking his head that he didn't.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Jeff Roberts. I work for the ASIMI Group. It was our company that probably started this discussion about a year and a half ago. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, and we think we appreciate the board's discussion here today and the work that the staff has done kind of researching this. We also did some research, found that it's difficult to convert a CSA to a CSD. You have to have a willing population of folks that want to serve on the board and get very involved. And that's obviously impossible to do when you have a new project with no one living there. So I think it's good to keep the option open and keep the discussion going. Not sure exactly where it's going to head in the coming years, but at least if the opportunity to present to the board a CSD proposal is there, then that's something we can all take advantage of. So appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for calling on me.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Any questions?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further public comment, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the board. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, Paige, so you mentioned that that after you did your research, this program might not accomplish what we initially asked for. So your recommendation, staff recommendation now removes that requirement about the CSDs. Is that what it does?
This is a policy question, meaning that you're
Okay. Tell me, Brian.
It's my understanding, because that couldn't be done, we're going to leave things as is. And
Okay.
we're going to leave the policy as is and wait, as Mr. Roberts said, until something in the future comes forward. Then we keep the door open. But right now, it's going to be status quo until something else comes before us in the
Okay.
future.
That cleared it up.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Is that correct, County? I mean, that was my understanding now. If that's
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's the will of the board, yes.
If it's a will of the board, yeah. That would be my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is we leave status quo as is, and if something comes before us in the future, then we will look at it again at that time. But as for now, I choose to leave things as they are and have been for the last 20 years.
I'll take that as a motion if you're willing to give it.
Yes,
All
sir,
right.
Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And that's what we'll have. All right, thank you.
We now move to item number 12 under County Administrative Office, adopt amendment to the salary resolution adding one Director of General Services to the Internal Services Department.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ed Hill, your Chief Operating Officer and Interim Director of Internal Services Department. Today, we're seeking your board's approval to amend the salary resolution, adding one Director of General Services and setting the salary range, as well as adding one Executive Assistant in Facility Services Org 8935, and retitling the existing Director of Internal Services to the Director of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer in Org 8905, as reflected in Appendix F. The recommended action is a first step in a county reorganization of the ISD department in two separate departments, a General Services Department and an Information Technology Services Department. If approved, the action will allow us to open the recruitment for these department head positions and recruit them concurrently while we finish the reorganization of the department, which we'll be bringing to your board on January 7th. I'd like to conclude with thanking HR for getting the resolutions done in a timely fashion, as well as the brochures, and getting us across the finish line. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ed, thank you for your commitment, and I'm sure that you're looking forward to everything being done. Any other comments from board members or questions for staff? No. All right, anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to our board for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Seconds by Sal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
We now move to item number 13, under Public Health. Conduct first hearing to amend the master schedule of fees, charges, and recover cost orders by amending Section 900.
David, the floor is yours.
Sorry, a little stiff. David Lucchini, Director, Fresno County Public Health Department. With me, I have Vince Mendez, Division Manager of Environmental Health, and we have Amy Riles, Senior Analyst with Environmental Health, who worked a lot on these fees. So we just have some slides. We'll do some brief slides. I know you've had a long morning. Thank you. Is it on?
Soon to be afternoon.
Good afternoon, good day. I don't see anything, but all right.
While he's bringing them up, I may ask the board, because you do have a full packet, if you'd like to see the slides.
I would say summary is good. And by the way, not to take away from the work that has to be done. Anytime that we deal with master schedule of fees, studies have to be done in every category where there's adjustments, because when there's an audit that's done, those fees charged have to be based upon studies. So the work that the analyst did is critical. So I just want to share that.
And then, oh, here we go. So, yep, I appreciate that, because someone grew up in the family business, sandwich shop and all that. Believe me, in my mom's head, when we're going through these fees, I hear her voice, government fees, government fees. So I take this very seriously when we do these fee studies and proposed increases. So a quick timeline. In July was the last time the board approved a 3-year fee increase. October 21st was when the latest board-approved fee increase took effect. Then in May of 23, Public Health began reviewing these fees and the ordinance to look at updating the fees. In May 23 to August 24th, DPH staff met internally, reviewed applicable state regulations, and collaborated to update the ordinances so they were more up to date with what the state ordinances are. During August of 24, we completed the fee study and the time task analysis. We wanted to have the fiscal year 23-24 closed to capture true cost, because one of the things that you did for us was increase salaries and benefits. We were struggling with staff retention and recruitment, so the increases you did for the environmental health specialist was critical to help with that. So, but we also wanted to capture those costs when we calculated the fees. Then in November of 24, we had fee calculation methodology approved by the auditor controller, which we appreciate the timeliness they did on reviewing the fees. We did a media release on November 15th to review the proposed increase in fees to the businesses. We also did a public hearing, and we recorded the public hearing. We had hearings both in English and Spanish with 33 total public participants. For those who may not have heard from the media release, we did send out emails, and if the emails were rejected and we got notified, we called the business owner and asked them to update their contact information with our office, and then notified them of this the fee increases that were coming up, and they had an opportunity to provide any feedback. We also sent hard copy about the public notice to those who didn't get it by email or we couldn't reach by phone. Next slide. So this is a brief thing that shows you once again back in 21-22 was the last increase. We also on the bottom, if you look at the top rate increases, we're about a 70% cost recovery. So whatever's not recovered, we use the health realignment, which you heard CAO talk about health realignment at $91. Correctional health, which I keep a close ear on when I hear that. So we want to make sure we're maximizing our cost recovery so that we could use our health realignment to other services that has been a high priority for the board, especially when it comes to unpermitted vendor activities, majority in food, but also in Coupa, illegal dumping, and also we lose those health realignment dollars to deal with rabies control and solid waste issues. The proposed, the next slide, please. Oh, okay. Oh. There we go. These are the proposed fees for the 24-25, 25-26, 26-27. The biggest jump, of course, is 24-25. But a reminder, we haven't had increase in the last couple of years, and the last increase was based at 70% of cost recovery. On the Coupa side, the increase is higher than other programs due to the reinspection frequency, time spent conducting inspections, and stringent documentation that's required by the state. The Coupa hourly rate will only be charged for administrative enforcement orders and consultation requests. Dairy rates are set by CDFA, but the hourly rate for the dairy is a new fee category and will only be used for re-inspections, resampling that were previously charged under the general consumer protection hourly rate, and also any consultations that are needed. For emergency response team hourly rate, 83% of those program expenses in 23-24 were salaries and benefits, including overtime and standby. That is a 24/7 unit, so they're always on call. And with a 15% increase in salaries and benefits since November 23, so our S&B costs have increased significantly. ERT rate only is used for cost recovery and not charged to general public without incident. So one of these things that we are capturing, I know you saw the grand jury report over the summer, a couple of those things where our fees were low and that we need to make sure we're staffed appropriately to make sure we're meeting all the visits to the businesses and get those inspections, and we think this will help us get that done. With that, we're open to questions from all our team.
Questions for Mr. Lucchini? Anyone in the public wishing to comment on the new fee structure being proposed? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the board for action.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We will take Steve as the second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you, board.
Now move to 13.1 under Public Works and Planning, award contract 24-DB-02 Clovis Regional Relay Libraries to Harris Construction Company. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as mentioned earlier this morning, Supervisor Brandon Quintero recused himself under the Levine Act.
Excellent. I'll note for the record they have left the room. So with that, let's get a quick presentation on this. I think this is just the contract that's coming back to us. We took action on at our last meeting in regards to which vendor we were going to use based upon the RFP score sheet. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Chairman, board members, thank you. 12 years ago, I started this project when I was in a previous life. We're going to conclude it now. We're going to get the board hopefully approving the action in front of us today with a design build contract with Harris. The design build contract will start at the $37 million and change, $37,450. We will be bringing back a budget amendment to you for some additional service work, trying to run back to the contract, some furniture, some artwork. No sharp objects, Supervisor, please. And with the board approval today, the process will start. And both delivery schedules are part of your agenda item. They will be finishing similar in nature, but whatever project can move the fastest, it will. And we have Harris here, Matt, to answer any questions. Here to answer any questions you may have. And thank you, Dan and Allison, to all your perseverance with this, working with this. And thank you to Aaron and my staff. And Mr. Nerlin, thank you very much for helping us shepherd this through the process, because we have another one queuing up right now at the Ag Center. Hopefully we can put that together, get the documentation to go and have an actual first true design build. This was kind of a hybrid design build. But with today's action, we're joining the 21st century.
So with I saw a schedule, rough schedule that was laid out, construction schedule, which actually shows both libraries being delivered about the same time, which, Matt, I appreciate that. I knew you could do it. Thank you. So that being said, I'm hopeful that is that construction schedule built into the contract.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. And groundbreaking. So that really has us doing the groundbreaking within the next handful of weeks. So is it possible to do the groundbreaking for Reedley as well as Clovis before the end of the year? Matt? Oh, it's up to us. So that would be.
We have already discussed that very issue with CAO Nerlin, and we'll support whatever you need to have a support, bring in whoever we need to bring in with equipment or whatever else. So we just want to get it on the calendars and schedule with the holidays coming up. You tell us when to be there and we're going to show up.
All right. We'll get back with you very soon. All right. Okay. Any questions for staff? This is just the legal part that the contract that we need to bring back to us. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion. I will move for staff's recommendation. Is there a second from Buddy? Buddy Mendez seconded it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I think I'm in a pretty good position here to negotiate my library at this time, being there's only 3 of us here. Yeah. So, but again, I'll be the team player, and I'll go ahead and support that. But I want all of us to remember I am next in line, and we'll let this one go through with that understanding. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Mr.
Supervisor
Chairman.
Pacheco, that's been made very, very clear to our department, at least.
Yeah, I've never been in this quite. I am in the catbird's position here. Yeah. But being it is a high priority of my 2 colleagues, yeah, I fully support that, and we'll wait for the vote, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect 3 ayes, 2 recusals. So we can state that properly. Thank you. We'll be in touch soon, Matt. All right. Thank you, colleagues.
Item 14, board appointments.
So-
Board of Supervisor Committee reports and comments.
Committee reports and comments. So we will start with Supervisor Pacheco.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Quintero?
None.
Supervisor Brandow?
No, sir.
Supervisor Mendez?
Say one thing, I think we'll pay a bigger price on the 17th, but not having a second November meeting, we're still now having to pay the piper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Lots and lots of
Yeah, I
items.
like 2 November, 1 December, personally, yeah.
So, Buddy, before we leave you, why don't you talk about the CSAC conference just briefly that you and I went to?
I don't know if I want to talk about it.
Well, technically, for the record, we have to report out that we any travel that we do, we have to just state for the record.
Well, we attended CSAC, I thought, except for one item that you were involved in, that it was pretty poor. I thought they did, and it's really reflects on the executive board of what's being put out. I thought was one of the worst ones that I've been to, except for one that Paul Nerlin was involved in and Nathan was involved in. And Manny from Stanislaus County put it together. But outside of that, I think it was really, their sessions were really poor.
All right. Thank you, Buddy. On that happy note, that's perfect. That's you just reporting out.
Maybe you should give it next time, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
That committee that I'm vice chair of and Manny chairs, that's FG&A. And we did have some great discussions about things that are going to be happening in the future. And I thought a little bit more constructive dialogue where we left politics out and just talked about finance, governments, and administration, which is what the committee's all about. So I also attended SACRS, which is State Association of County Retirement Systems, a couple weeks ago in Monterey. I had a similar experience where I was a bit frustrated because the board there typically is a little bit more politically minded one way, and so a lot of the presentations are based upon one side.
They're left-leaning.
Well, you just did it for me, so thank you for that. And then I also too attended CSAC, and I serve on one of the policy boards there as well. And we spent about 3 days at CSAC. We had to come home a day early because there were commitments that Buddy and I both had here in the district. But I do appreciate having an opportunity to spend time with a lot of our other colleagues from the Central Valley, since we are very outnumbered. Buddy, who served on the UCC board, was not reelected to that board, and I was very frustrated by it. I actually asked a couple folks to meet me in the parking lot, but nobody took me up on that offer. Just in jest. But Buddy was a fantastic voice for the Central Valley, and we now have no Central Valley representation on the UCC board, so whole nother story with that. A week ago, we kicked off our traffic awareness program, a PSA campaign. Really appreciate the CAO's office, the PIOs, Sonia, Gustavo, Josh, who have put together fantastic messaging, which is being pushed out on social media. We have it on a number of billboards. I want to thank Outfront Media, who did a great job getting all the billboard locations up quickly in effective areas along 99, 41, Clovis Avenue. Sadly, though, we have seen a number of deaths, drunk driving incidents, distracted driving incidents, where people have lost their lives just since last week. And the whole goal of this campaign is to remind people, don't drink and drive, don't drive distracted, and slow down. And just want to say thank you to all the efforts at the CAO's office, the Highway Patrol, and Outfront Media, as well as Univision, Telemundo, and again, the social media sponsors that we're working with too are helping us with. I want to thank James Coos, who's going to be certifying the election very soon. One of the reasons we can't have results on Election Day, because state law requires that any ballots that are put into the mail have to be counted as long as they're postmarked on Election Day. Sometimes it takes 5 days for ballots to get to us, especially, I think in Coalinga, people who mail ballots in Coalinga, it goes out of county and then comes back to us. So it's very strange, but state laws allow for people to cure ballots up, several weeks after the election has taken place, and there are hundreds of ballots that always need to be cured because signatures don't match or there are other issues. So they spilled coffee on their ballot. So that is very frustrating. And every ballot that comes back with a signature or envelope has to be inspected by a human being and a machine before they open it. And again, that's all done confidentially. It's open and then counted. And if the signature doesn't match, it goes through a curing process. So very cumbersome. There are ways to do it better. Other states do it better. I think we need to figure that out. But I want to thank James. And yesterday I was in Sacramento with my chief of staff. Chief of Staff Brett. He still did he lose his job this morning? Yeah, maybe there's something I don't know. He always gets nervous. He's all Brett and I were up there, but my former field representative David Tongipa was sworn in to be our new assembly member in the Assembly 8th District. I am very proud of him. He worked very hard. I know he's going to represent us well, but I was telling someone I have not spent time in the gallery in the assembly building, in the assembly area for like 20 years. And so going back, it almost seems like nothing really has changed except some of the screens and electronics. But watching one of our own being sworn in, I was extremely proud. So did that yesterday and came back late last night. So with that, that's all that I have.
We now move to item number.
Sal, yes.
I just wanted to comment a little bit about the CSAC. And, Buddy, I want to thank you for the time you represented on that board when everybody stepped back and you were there by yourself representing there. But I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the conference itself. It just seemed that it also took a couple of steps back. It didn't seem as organized, and the presenters, it seemed like they had their own opinion and that was it. It wasn't as open as for comments on a lot of the workshops, and hopefully it'll start changing again to the way it was before. It just seemed disorganized to me in a lot of ways, but that was just the part. But want to thank you for your service on that board.
All right, Bernice.
We now move to item 15, board appointments.
We'll start with Supervisor Brandow.
Yes, I'd like to reappoint to the IHSS Advisory Committee, Nick Lutton. So it's a reappointment. He's already served, and that is the consortium nominated seat.
All right. Buddy? Sal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to appoint Michelle Salas to the Behavioral Health Board, and that's it.
All right, and I'd like to reappoint Jeff Hensley to the District 5 seat, which expired on 11/1 of 2024. Is there anyone in the public wishing to comment on any of the nominations we have just made? This is to the Fresno Regional Workforce Development Board. Yeah, it would be important for me to state that board. Sorry. Fresno Regional Workforce Development Board. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, oh, yes.
For these appointments.
Oh, no, these are not appointments.
Yeah.
These are just the appointments, if you have any comments about the appointments. All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes unanimously.
We now move to item 16, public presentations. This portion of the meeting reserved for persons desiring to address the board on any matter not on this agenda.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman, Board. I just want to make a quick comment about the changes coming in November. And I want to address Supervisor Quintero and Supervisor Brandow. During my times of coming here and observing, I thought you guys have made a valuable contribution to Fresno County. I thought you've done an excellent job on the board, and you've represented your districts very well, excellently. And Supervisor Quintero, you've been quite a fixture in Fresno County. As far as I recall, it was in the 1970s or 1980s you began running for office. I remember you driving around in kind of an old-style two-door, kind of a Bondo brown gray car. You used to frequent my dad's business.
1958 Mercedes.
Used to frequent my dad's auto parts store and machine shop. So I remember that. And Supervisor Brandow, my son Sean lived in your district. Excuse me. Anyway, he thought you were excellent, and he really appreciated your mentorship. So both of you will be missed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Seeing no further public comment, I'll close the public portion.
You may now receive public comment for closed session items 17 through 23.
Anyone wishing to comment on closed session items?
I have a new agenda. Sorry, I'm new to this. I just happened to come in here and I was going to.
Yeah, feel free to.
Okay, yeah, real quick. My name is Charles Lopez. I've been going to the Fresno County Library since I was a kid and stuff. I actually came to Steve Brown's office to complain. I've never had any problems at the branch libraries forever and stuff, but lately a few of the employees there, I don't know, it just seems like I'm being picked on or whatever, or they're harassing me. And then just recently, well, I'll get back to a couple of years ago, I was at the Woodward Park Library, and I was just sitting in the quiet room, and there's one lady, Marcy or something, I can't remember her name. She came out there and started cussing me out, told me that I had to go now because it was 4:45, and they were closed at 5 on a Sunday. And she started cussing me out, told me I had to get out now because the county doesn't pay overtime. It has to be by 5 o'clock, whatever. So, which is fine, just talk off everything. And then she was whatever. So I told her I was going to report on her, but I decided, you know what, I go in all the time. I don't want to bother. Anyway, so a few weeks later, I asked for a paper, and they, can I have both of them at Wall Street and the Fresno Bee? Well, she came out of nowhere. No, you can't have both and stuff because this and that. I said, okay, that's fine. But there was another guy there that when I asked for which I don't like going to ask the paper because there's some attitude. Anyways, this one particular gentleman, I asked him paper. I had to ask him 4 or 5 times. And I said, can I have the paper? Can I have the He just sit there. So this lasted, then about a week later after that incident, I asked the guy. And so I asked about 5 times again. I said, can I have the paper? And so that lady again, she came with, oh, you're going to be banned. For what? For rude to the staff. So whatever. So I went through the procedures, went over here, talked to the the lady in charge, and she said, well, you have incidents before, whatever, but it hasn't do anything. So that was whatever. I got banned for a week. I fought it and everything, and nothing ever happened. So this lady thing, like a couple of weeks ago, I was in the branch. So I don't even try to get the paper anymore for anybody, because I went to the one lady one time at the Gillis branch. There's a lot of homeless over there. So I asked the lady for the paper. She goes, we close at 5 o'clock. It was 4:45. Can I have the paper? I mean, I didn't say nothing, but I just thought, whatever, let's let it go. And then a few weeks later, I'm at the computer, and the computer's on real slow, and I had my charger on the phone. And then so it was working, so I left my stuff there charging, and then she goes, oh, you can't come over, you can't charge it. I said, well, don't be sorry, but somebody might potentially want it, but nobody was there, so whatever. Then I told this, I said, I'll take a supervisor. She goes, oh yeah, you can't have it. So then I talked to, I didn't know that the manager was there, that Mark. And I said, hey, look, I'm just charging it, and nobody's here, so yeah, I don't see no problem. Anyway, so forget that. And then, so this lady, so when I got banned, I went to the restroom. There, like I said, there are a lot of homeless, like Gillis Branch in front. I went in there and I was using the restroom. A lot of homeless. When you just go in the restroom and start banging the door. So I went into the restroom, and then somebody banging on the door. And I said, hey, quit banging the door. And then when I was coming out, the security guard came at me like she was going to attack me. Then actually, he's downstairs here from the county. And she goes, you can't tell people not to bang the door? Like, I don't know who was in there. So I sat down real quick, and I'll finish up. I sat down, and then
Here's what I would recommend. So if you're having issues wherever you reside, identify which supervisor up here is your representative. I would ask that you work through their office, and we have strict limits on time.
Yeah, that's fine.
We allow, so please continue to work with Supervisor Brandow. It sounds like you may have started that process, and we take these these allegations very seriously. We'll look into them and make sure that appropriate action is taken.
Apparently, the lady said she does it, because she said if I call again, the one Jennifer, whatever she is, the head librarian, she said if I call again, I'm going to be charged with trespassing.
Understood.
Calling?
We will look into it. But I thank you for being here to
Do I
share
need
this with
my
us.
number or something? With
Well, if you're already working with
I think
Supervisor
you've already
Brandt,
connected with my Chief of Staff, Robert Jeffers. I'd follow up with him.
Okay, just let me know.
And I'll actually have him come out and meet you in the lobby right now.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
You got it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your help.
Seeing no further public comment on closed session items, I'm going to close the public portion. Is there anything, are we going to need to reconvene after closed session to report out?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not believe we'll need to report out following closed session. So if the board chooses, they could adjourn following closed session.
I'll entertain a motion to that effect. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That carries unanimously. With that, we'll move into closed session.